The hero confesses that he is very tired of everything that is happening. He emphasizes that some things are only able to him, and they benefit others. The hero thinks about what things he had to do. The young man announces that he will now live differently, and will act in a new way. He explains that if he needed a reason to be late, then it would just happen because he had fallen asleep. The hero confesses that he apparently overdo it with Split, or did not manage at all. The young man notes that his tears do not dry. He says he will no longer come to the meeting, and decide to boycott it. X tells that after a longer sleep last night it feels better, and now he does not want to go anywhere. The girl welcomes X and says, hope that today he will manifest himself as best as possible. The main character reports that guildmaster wanted to talk to him, so she asks to wait a little. Guildmaster is surprised to know that the hero is actually an unhealthy sorcerer who does not even know how to use elementary magic. He asks why the hero disappeared without permission, and why he did not come to an important meeting. The master notes that it seems too early for the hero to go into adventures and become a real traveler. The man views the card with the hero's personal data. Rank, E, nickname, magician, clumsy, age, 19 years, height, 160 centimeters, weight, 45 kilograms, special skill. Lengthening the action will be covered. He says that he, as a punishment, will be assigned the lowest rank, F. The hero is only surprised from such an absurd solution. His rating was immediately reduced to 3 levels. X notes that if it drops a drop of his blood on the card, he will be registered immediately. The master replies that he needs to hurry up and drip his blood on the map to destroy everything he worked on. He is surprised why the hero is just standing, doing nothing, and calls him to act immediately. X confesses that he can no longer tolerate what is happening, and feels that it is time to finally make some decision. The hero confesses that he may not be created for the life of the adventure. He sincerely thanks everyone for support and help. The teacher could not understand why the ICS wanted to leave and began to shout at the hero. X notes that for the first time he sees such an emotion on the face of the master. But he immediately adds that he is indifferent. The leader of the most powerful clan of zombies, PSC, rejoices that 11 is leaving them. He is pleased to realize that now to enter the Guild of Adventurers will be more difficult. He also remembers how he was in a guild with a person who was able to use only the weakest magic. The girl appeals to the hero to stop, reminding him that he still has unknown tasks. X tells that he has already left guild. The young man adds that he is probably the only one here who can cry, though he is not sure of it. He says he has already wept all his tears yesterday, and it is better not to delay it. The pan also notes that the hero now has the courage to behave so badly. X notes that none of them understood anything. He explains that solo tasks are paid 50% more, so they can be earned more, but it is not for him. The girl announces that these taxes are set by the feudal lord, the guardian of the forest and the former owner of the guild. The hero agrees and asks to read aloud the conditions and size of the award. The girl notices that these 3 tasks seem quite complicated, and no one dares to take them. For the feudal lord, you need to repair the magic artifact of his maid. For the forest guard, to bypass and protect the forest from threats. And for the former head of the guild, the month had to manage and maintain order in the tavern. The girl reports that the reward for these tasks will be 7 small silver coins. Pants notes that even if they cannot fulfill these requirements, it must still be agreed to these proposals. AKS adds that this is a kind of lunch fee. Pan sighs and says that to receive such orders is humiliating for him. The hero understands that such a reward has no value. He says he is an EC adventure seeker, but this reward does not meet his level at all. X adds that these 3 tasks will be the last. He says he just fulfills them. He will complete his adventure and will no longer be an adventure seeker. The hero uses the icy bullet spell to start the restoration of the thing belonging to the servant of the feudal lord. After a few moments of hard work, he announces that the magical update is completed. X notes that the salary is already spent, and thinks that the light will last about a month. The hero does not stop and continuing to work in all rooms, continuing to work. X notes that the place is really big, and there is something to do. He confesses that he is very tired of work. The hero thinks of what to do with materials to create a portable ball of wind and ice. He thinks how you can use a well-tuned turbine to spin this ball. The young man completes work and feels real pleasure. When everything is ready, he suddenly notices a strange feeling in his chest. X notes that he had a bad anticipation, and it soon came true. Viscount Redley states that you need to produce as much as 100 such banks. The hero replies that he is grateful for the proposal. but is forced to give up and apologize. Viscount offensively calls the young man a worthless magician. The hero firmly states that he is no longer going to obey, because all past 5 years have been required by the impossible. He cannot even imagine how it would be to sleep quietly. The hero firmly states that he will not change his decision. Redley warns that if he does not like the hero's explanation, he will not hesitate to execute the death sentence. Viscount orders the hero to apologize. I am sure that his threats will affect the boy. X confesses that he no longer wants to work here. The hero rejoices in his success, feeling the incredible exaltation from the goal. X looks at you with anxiety and asks if everything is fine with him because he looks concerned. Window with dissatisfaction says that the hero is a talented magician, capable only of the simplest spells. He demands that this time the hero brings him more profit than before. Redley adds that it had to be taken care of from the beginning. The hero proposes to turn to someone else, and notes that he has already departed from business. X confirms that Viscount's request has been fulfilled. He says he is no longer here. The hero confesses that he is tired of personal requests. It seems too exhausting. He also notices that former forest guards no longer appear here because they have long been handed over to others. X adds that he has been engaged in this case for 5 years. The hero says that collecting magic stones is becoming more difficult, because there is more and more extra work. X used the spell of a fireball against the Orc King. He noted that the Orc Tsar noticed him, but X managed to ahead of him. The hero suggests that the Orc King believed fireballs do not pose any threat to him. The young man confidently states that his fire will never go out, and emphasizes the peculiarities of his magic. She lasts surprisingly long. The hero confidently states that every day becomes stronger, but suddenly someone breaks his peace. X feels sharp pain. He was bitten by a shadow wolf. Shock and confusion cover him, because he understands that it happened because of his own inattention. The hero repels a dark figure that tries to attack him, and instantly uses a death. The wolf rushes, but the hero notices the girl had time to bite him. He confesses that the wolf could still cause him serious harm. The hero realizes that he could not fully overcome the enemy, but still hit him with lightning. The hero notes that, after the use of mana potion, he wakes up an appetite and wants to eat something well. He reports to this day. 1 king of orcs, 8 shadow wolves, 15 orcs and 2 goblins were defeated. During this time, they used 1 healing tincture and 7 mana potions. X notes that the number of monsters has decreased significantly lately, so now they no longer need a warder. The young man thanks them for their support and assistance for the last 5 years. He adds that it is more important than how many monsters are left, and there are much less. It is finally an opportunity to sleep in his own bed. X was happy because he can finally relax. He notices the bite on his leg and the pants are torn. The hero is confused and thinks what to do to him now. X decides to pick up his pants with a happy needle, but something goes wrong. And instead of fixing the problem, it only aggravates the situation. The hero decides to trim the damaged pants and promises to buy new ones as soon as the opportunity appears. X receives the last request from the guilder to care for the tavern and follow the order in the institution for the next month. The man orders the hero to start working before the institution is opened. The former guilder is the exhausted old man who still considers himself an important person. The hero uses different magical spells, a fiery ball, an ice ball, and a water column, to keep the house clean. X confesses that he is very tired throughout the day, because he constantly used the magic of the elements, especially depleted his spell on expansion. The man is interested in the hero why he is late today. He adds that there will be no punishment, but this time it is not necessary to count on a fee this time. X nods in response, and guildmaster laughs loudly, and adds that next month he should no longer be late. The hero rejoices and says with a smile that it is great. X rejoices that now he does not have to process all the work. Guildmaster advises to record this violation in the report, because it was really a hero mistake. The hero tells that he has already coped with 3 tasks. The girl reports that the task is completed. The former Enser thanks her for the help. The chains that have drawn the hero are now torn. The hero gladly leaves the building and confidently announces that the work has been completed. X is disappointed that being an adventurer is a real hell, and in general it looks like a damned slavery. And now ICS is finally free, and from that moment on, his carefree life begins. The hero enjoys a wonderful morning, inhaling the fresh air and admiring the first rays of the sun. X tells that he has long had these thoughts, and now he has finally appeared time and money to make his plans. The young man rejoices in his freedom. He calls himself X. The hero tells that he is a magician, and is able to spell only natural magic. The hero tells of his unusual abilities. His fire never fades, and the ice he creates does not melt throughout the month. He claims that his magic works longer than usual. X points out that he has money, because he has not yet gone shopping before, and suddenly notices a pleasant aroma. The young man with enthusiasm points to the counter where appetizing kebabs lie. He adds that for the first time in his life he allows himself true taste. The hero gladly notes that he will finally be able to taste something delicious. Viscount Roderick emphasizes that the hero has only the magic of the elements. He is annoyed that the hero refuses to accept his help. The young man nods, confirming that Vigraf is right, and he fully agrees with his opinion. The Roderick is interested in the name of the simple thing they are talking about. Isman's servant replies that his name is AKS. Vicomte ordered not to let this man beyond his possessions, and asks that no one would hire him anymore. Insman replied that everything would be done as soon as possible. A man with a smile states that he can no longer wait for the moment when that man will ask him to work. Viscount notes that this time he will have to learn modesty, and adds that he has already given the instruction of pain. The servant is also interested in the device standing in front of him. Roderick says that the magician created a small tool, combining the magic of ice and wind. The man is surprised. Feeling cool air and icy touch, he did not expect such a result from a beginner. Eisman stressed that he had a real sense when he chose this device. Viscount suggested bringing it to the kitchen. In addition, he confessed that at first he wanted to make about 200 of such, but that unadorned man simply fled without completing the case. Vicomte asks what happened and is interested in the cuisine. Insman notes that the water supply to the tank has stopped. The man replies that all this has created the same magician, so it is not surprising that there is no water now. He proposes to call another magician or use Grimier if it is cheaper. Eisman agrees. Even in this case, the result will still be better than what ACC could do. The hero is happy to taste the dish. His face glows with joy. The taste of this treat brings him real pleasure. The young man confesses that he no longer remembers when he last tasted something so delicious. He genuinely rejoices that he finally left his previous work. The hero feels him eating more, but understands that if he overdo it, his stomach is sure to get hurt from overeating. He notices that after many years of hard work, his body became weaker. ACS is surprised that only one bite was so satisfying and saturated it. Another character is wondering if he is going to eat further. The hero stretches a guy with skewers with kebabs, inviting to treat. XS is drawn to the boy food, pointing to it. He is anxious to eat slowly, otherwise he can spoil the stomach. The guy thanked the hero sincerely, adding that he had not tasted meat for 6 months. X recalls that as an orphan knows how valuable such luxuries as meat. The hero promises that when they meet again, he will treat the interlocutor with something delicious. He argues that life without work is satisfying, though he does not yet feel full of peace and intends to live as he pleases. The young man continues to think about the future and confesses he does not need anything, but he really wants to spend money on himself. He notices that the world around has changed beyond recognition, and it will become a little tight his head. However, the hero firmly decided to spend his money, though he has not purchased anything yet. X feels that he needs support and healing. He extends a pillow to relieve voltage, emphasizing its convenient shape. The hero with joy and smile on his face hugs a soft pillow, enjoying a pleasant feeling. The young man with pleasure feels the softness of the pillow. The hero confesses that he dreams of picking her home and does not let go of the pillow because he feels true happiness. The girl asks the hero with surprise whether he is really. The girl adds that he really is. X explains that he just decided to look at the pillow. The woman notices her daughter. She says the daughter will be happy if she appears to be one who admires her. X specifies that he simply checked the quality. The hero explains he touched and polluted it, so now he will have to buy it. The woman explained that this is only an example, so it cannot be bought. The girl offers her own solution to this situation. X thanks for this decision, but politely refuses. The girl hobby notes which hero is sweet. The girl appeals to the hero to help her clean the water barrel, explaining that the guild did not even want to consider her request. The hero thinks that because of the weird request of people, he has problems, and now he can no longer accept any requests. He notices that although the girl loves to be sarcastic, she clearly knows the limits. The girl thanks the hero for listening to her request. The woman says the questionnaire can be sent to the guild later. The hero finally confirmed his decision. He is no longer an adventurer and will not participate in any tasks. Meanwhile, Eastman's Window's estate stands thoughtfully, staring at the jug. The Eastman notices that the jug has cracked, and is surprised why it happened. He asks carefully, because he clearly used magic according to the instructions. Class A wizard noted that when he asked to repeat the process, everything went without any problems. He added that he was not going to break the barrel at all. I just wanted to attach the ball to it. The magician was surprised, because such magic, he said, does not exist. The demon confesses that he had no idea how much the magic of ACS would be. Now he does not even imagine his life without this comfortable jug. He proposes to bring another water barrel, so that everyone can rest a little. The hero immediately agrees, considering this proposal a wonderful idea. The light fades, and this is immediately noticed by the servant, thinking that this time it is the case of the hands of the X. From now on, the skyscraper of the butler is just beginning. The hero firmly refuses. The woman was still smiling and asking a new request. Then the X finally gathered with the spirit and said no, confidently. The girl invites the hero to thank him in the form of a slim, although she has money. The hero notices that such a pillow costs 5 silver coins, and considers this price quite high. 2 little creatures, one with a demon, the other with an angel, argue whether the hero should work. The angel assures that it will take only 5 minutes, but the hero will get a pillow just like that. The demon assures that it makes no sense to work at all. The girl offers the hero to use the bathroom and persistently asks to agree. It adds that this product is very popular, and the demand for it is very high. X understands that if he disagrees right now, then he will definitely not get this product. X really wants this pillow. He assures that it is not a job, but only a small friendly service. In the end, the young man agrees. Aunt cannot restrain the hobby. She really likes the hero. She even calls him a sweetheart. Smiling, his aunt asks if he really seeks to become her son-in-law. She says that her daughter is also fond of the hero. X, glad to see the girl's joy. In addition, he notices that the lacrimal pillow has now finally switched to its possession. The hero calls for a magical flame, directing a powerful spell on enemies, a fiery ball. The girl learns in surprise that the term can only be a year. She is wondering if everything will last longer. X thinks of why he was taught in general, and honestly confesses that for the second time he could hardly repeat that act. The aunt, meanwhile, reports that someone has come to them. The girl gladly welcomes the hero and calls him her brother. Aunt told that it was thanks to the Uyun that they can now use the bathroom. She thanked him sincerely for it. Lena genuinely confesses to X in her feelings. X tells the girl no longer to speak like this, at least until he grows up. Lena replies that he is already enough adult. The hero thought, if she's talking about people, orcs can decide to eat it. The girl says that if he no longer wants to be an adventure seeker, she offers him to use her magic by working on his aunt. The hero confidently states that he finally decided not to work anymore. Anna apologized to him, assuring that she was really realized now. The girl says he will no longer make such suggestions. Lena runs up to the heroes and hugs them too, reassuring the young man. Don't worry, everything will be fine. X notices how their concern fills his heart with warmth. He thanks them both for their help and assures that he is all right now. The young man sincerely thanks them for today. Aunt smiles and says they are always happy to help. And the girl reminds the hero, if there are problems, he can always turn to his friends. The guy asks his aunt if she heard about the icy ball. Aunt replies that this magic ball is used only by noble people. X tells that it is a ball that does not melt all year long. The young man gives this ball as an additional surprise. Girls with delight and pride look at each other. The girl thoughtfully asks herself why no one approaches her. This person was the 10th. The hero, with a slight sadness, says that now it has become even twice as pleasing to fall asleep. He also notices that thanks to a new pillow, his sleep has become much better, and now he can rest for more than 3 hours a day. The hero is glad that he left the Guild of the Adventures, but already feels famine. The girl with her ears gladly welcomes the hero. On the table lies food for Slimmies, which can be purchased for 10 silver coins. It is harmful, but is ready for use. The girl suddenly says that the hero has to pay for her. X is genuinely surprised by such a proposal. The waitress frozen in amazement when she realized that the hero himself was about to dine in their institution. She notices that they finally wanted to go to the restaurant. The girl opens the menu by offering to choose a dish. The hero agrees, but he notes, if he likes something, he will call it himself. The hero turns to a friend for advice, not knowing what to choose from the menu. The waiter with a smile announces today's dish of the day, and then reports that the order of the hero is already waiting for him. X always gets great pleasure from your favorite dishes. The girl notices that the hero goes a pleasant warmth, and tears of joy appear in his eyes. The waitress notes that the X is warm to the touch, and tears appear in his eyes. Another character agrees with her, saying that he also thinks The hero draws attention that food is very common, but the combination of acid and mana is perfect here. X rejoices in the fact that it can give up tastelessly food, and sincerely grateful for this opportunity. The hero is happy to say that the dish was delicious. The girl asks if he has a little free time and looks at him caring, reminding that she is his younger sister. X says he is already released. It proposes to join forces, because they are both free now. The young man states he no longer wants to work. He also confesses that he wants to take a little stroll and get distracted before returning home. The hero confesses that because of pain, he cannot even stand on his feet. Another girl approaches the hero and is wondering what happens here and what happened. X notes that it smells pleasantly. The girl is wondering if everything is fine. The young man apologizes, explaining that the action of his enhancement has ended, and this happens to him constantly. He also tells that he can activate the magic of the elements and enhance it by providing support. The hero explains that his unique magic increases strength, health, agility, intelligence, as well as the supply of mana and energy. Each of these indicators increases by 1 point. She wondered if the hero had already recovered. Since she works as a doctor, she is now terribly tired. The girl confesses that she was very worried about him and asks for an apology. X proposes to thank her for salvation, having put a spell on it. He promises that she will not feel fatigue for a whole month. The girl thinks that this is a really generous proposal on the part of X. She asks who he and what force he owns. The girl is amazed by learning that the hero is able to use only initial magic for beginners. The heroine happily proclaims that now everything is healed. The girl ran to finish her business. X noted that he applied support only to those who were in his guild, but the girl did not hear that the effect of this effect, not tired, would last for her only a month. This group is considered the strongest throughout the guild, and the gentleman is glad that extra time is a real find. Another magician adds that a real adventure seeker should be not only brave, but also smart. The girl looks at the subject through the magnifying glass that the sorcerer brought her. The girl rejoices in their success, and enthusiastically calls them the true characters of this month. She proudly lists the victory of friends. They overcame the king of orcs, cannibal, shadow wolf, and many other monsters. The girl wondered how they managed to overcome these monsters. The pan just smiled mysteriously and replied that it remains a mystery. The hero explains that they simply take away the magic stone from a demon whom one of the foresters won. He adds that all this was made possible by an unknown guy who turned out to be incredibly strong. The gentleman treats everyone with a drink because they have earned a lot this month. But another magician confesses that he is very tired, thanks for the invitation, but refuses. The hero is wondering why he also feels bad. He adds that he has also felt fatigue lately and has not felt that boundless power for a long time. Another character agrees with the hero. They say, he is right. The hero thinks and says that they really need that sorcerer. Then he asks the girl to talk a little. The man tells the girl that you need to return the main and increase his rank. The man notes that ICS has been reinforced on heroes, and also adds that they could just relax, because they are the strongest adventurers. He notes that they need X to continue their business. The hero says with sadness that it was supposed to be the last glorious day of their team today. The hero says he is full and was already walking well. Now he just wants to relax in his room. But in front of the hotel, it is too noisy. The young man replies that he does not want to have unnecessary problems, so he decides to simply go to another place. At this time, someone is wondering if the girl is real. The girl hugs a soft bear, and suddenly finds out that it is a river. Ryuka notes that the ICS is late. X's replies that she came to visit him, but could not go to the hotel, because everyone was looking closely at her. It seems to him that she did not withstand such views, and hid nearby. X notices that the girl is shy, and thinks about how long she is already here. Ryuk sits in a cozy cafe, Silent Cat, and is interested in why the hero broke the magical treaty. She notes that without him the business will go bad. After all, she manages the sewing factory where live dolls work. The hero confesses that he has left his job, and sincerely apologizes for it. She asks if he is really going to go. Ryuk does not hide the surprise, learning that the hero does not plan to leave the city. Reika supported the choice of the hero, and agreed with his decision. The bear apologizes to the hero for hitting him before. Then this bizarre bear thanks the hero for his help and calls him his friend. For a long time, a bear that can speak uses its abilities to enhance the action of buff. But when the effect passes, it loses this ability. The girl sincerely thanks the hero for the help. The backpack tells that without the hero, The scraped bear loses his mind. The bear also emphasizes what he rests on the hero. The hero shares the story with the girl about how he was expelled from the guild. X tells that the backpack was very upset because of it. He notices that she seemed to become a completely different person. The hero adds that even Rukai said she will bring him to her senses. The former guy asks the girl for forgiveness and suggests to spend her home. He admires Ryuki's appearance, comparing it with a graceful doll. The girl happily welcomes the hero. X and Ryuka stood side by side, both clearly did not understand what was happening. He notices that two pretty girls are in the hero room in the middle of the day. The girl brings good news. He has already been approved to S, and adds that next month he is promised to rise to the rank of V. The hero states that he is no longer an adventure seeker, and confesses that he once had only rank F. The girl said that Guild had created a test for the hero, so that he could overcome difficulties and become stronger. She announces that the rates will now be high, and from that moment the Guild will no longer accept orders from the poor. The girl adds that in the future they will focus only on tasks with great benefits. She rejoices that the hero appeared in the Guild. The girl jokingly invites him to invite her on a date, but the hero only sighs, because he has no time at all. X looks at Rick and realizes that everything is fine. The hero states that he has changed and now wants to say something important. The bear, who suddenly spoke, assures that the guy still does not hear the girl, at least what she told him now. X understands that the bear voiced what he wanted to say. The girl confidently states that this toy said everything. The charming bear says that magicians are of great interest, because they are very rare. He also adds that the guild receives a commission from his partners and spends that money on his own needs. The hero is surprised to ask if that is really the case. It is difficult for him to believe that his mentor became a bear with the mind that only one unit is higher than the usual one. The bear says that first of all, the guild must apologize for its behavior. The hero notes that he finally returned home. Ryuk reminds him that he should thank the crazy bear for his help. X thanked him for his help. The answer was simple. The bear said it could be called Kumakichi. The guy asks Ryuk if she really told Kumakichi about the work of the guild. It reassures him. The hero thanks the girl for having rescued him. The guy tells Ryuk, Kumakichi, Linny, and her aunt in a restaurant that he had many wonderful friends. The girl explained that it was because of this that the hero gave up the offer. She said that many unsuccessful tasks have been recently received, and none of the members of the guild has never appeared. The hero looks around in surprise, not understanding what is happening. He feels that the end of the guild is very close. X also notes that Kumakichi is very pleasant and fluffy. The hero confesses that he is already tired of constant disputes with administrators. He is interested in how Ryuki's workshop is arranged. He adds that the work of the sewing workshop is very different, depending on whether there are automatic dolls. The hero confesses that he is worried, whether the backpack has time to fulfill the order on time. X cannot understand why Rick's facial expression. The girl agrees, adding that she has already heard about it before. She confesses that if it makes them work, it will look a real villain. The girl assures that her bear is not like that, but Kumakichi asks in response to X not to leave him. Rika explains that she understands how valuable and useful the 11 is, but the workshop will only be able to cope with when it reduces the rate of production a little. She adds, the world will continue to live without it, so you do not need to dump unnecessary responsibility. She offers the hero a little rest. The hero agrees and sincerely thanks the girl. The girl realized that the hero realized everything, and reported that she was now time to go. The hero thanked her and spent home. The other girl apologizes and says that Mr. X released a few days ago. The former guildmaster asks in surprise how it happened that the young man decided to leave and only learned about it last. The hero complains that because of all the troubles he had to endure, he spoiled all the delicious dishes in his restaurant. Now he hesitates whether his hero will be blamed for being released. He assures that if something serious happens, he will answer everything to the very end, whatever happens. And he advises you to review the documents again. The girl reminds him that the former guilder is well aware of her business. The girl views the document, and the man asks her what happened. She explains that this application was considered as declined, which means that the hero is no longer valid, and the guild no longer be responsible for him. The former guildwater is outraged and claims that it is absurd. The man thinks who will now take the place of Oxus after his release. In addition, he notes that they had just got into debt. The girl thanks the hero for his conscientious work. The characters come back from the task, and the girl immediately notices. The mission was unsuccessful. The young man notes in surprise that the situation looks strange. The hero explains that today's enemy is much stronger than they used to fight, and it has become much more difficult than a few days ago. The girl adds that this is the 9th failure of this month. Last year, they were the same in the whole year, and now only 3 days. She notes that those who have not encountered defeats often talk about a strong enemy. Guildmaster notes that the characters take positions and asks what happened. The hero replies that he wants to have a personal conversation and confesses he feels not good lately. He notes that the strongest team in this guild is a group called Zanbi. The hero reports that today is a special day and announces that he is about to give all the adventures of reprimand. The man is convinced that when they feel it for the first time, they will no longer be able to stop. It will capture them completely. Every day, Gilder emphasizes that adventurers are required to be careful and make decisions in any situation. The head of the guild addresses the adventurers, urging them to take their things and go on the road. In response, adventurers thank him for inspiring words. This secret is revealing during an urgent meeting in tavern. The hero gladly announces that he will give him even more power. The girl notes that strengthening without a battle does not make sense. She adds that someone already knew how effective it was. The magician emphasizes that a newcomer does not need to invent anything. It is enough to follow his instructions. In the meantime, the girl announces that everyone who wants to get strengthened should be in line and she will impose the right buffs. She asks Mary, who has 15 magical abilities. Mara thanks the girl for the help. In response, the girl notes that the dream has great power because it can use powerful natural spells, spending very little magical energy on it. Another character welcomes everyone and confesses that he will also not hurt him. I support him, saying it is really difficult work. The hero is surprised that all his reinforcement has already disappeared. The girl asks what is happening. She is reproached that she is a weak witch. Ice explained that the strengthening is only 10 minutes. The magician states that so many reinforcements were imposed on X that it would be enough for a whole month. Mara admits that without magic strengthening it is difficult to give everything else. The girl tells that without strengthening her magical force is reduced to the level of the baby, so she has nothing left to restore her forces by potion. You can just say that without enhancement, they can no longer work as before. Aiz is sure that all this is simply impossible. She has devoted her entire life to the learning of magic. In addition, this amplification lasts a maximum of 10 minutes. The girl sighs with frustration and says that it is a pity. Now they are no longer returning to the previous level. Another girl proposes to call another buffer master, noting that the strengthening is only 10 minutes. The hero thinks that ICS is really incredible. Mara says they need X. She remembers that he was kicked out, but hopes that they will be able to turn it back. He agrees that this is how to proceed. The girl replied that the guy who was next to him said they needed to apologize. The main guild asks who he should apologize to. The girl orders the heroes to go and apologize to the X. The hero notices that before him the mighty sorcerer who was discussed before. Auntie says she needs to reward the knives. She adds that it will cost about 10,000, and he warns, there will be no tasks more. The young man recalls that he once obeyed all orders without doubt, but now he refuses each of them. He believes that the world will cope with it without it. The girl is wondering what the hero is doing here, and with irony calls him an unsuccessful sorcerer. The hero notices the 1B team. This team in the city is the most famous. Everyone knows them here. Pan reminds Ix that he should be more polite with his former colleagues. He notices the stubborn and cheeky look of the hero. X acknowledges that he has been somewhat immobile earlier, and now he does not even know what to answer this remark. The young man asks the gentleman to apologize. The Pan does not understand what they want from him, and the XCHS hard requires apology. The gentleman is surprised whether the hero is in common sense, and threatens angrily that he can dismember him. X adds that a real traveler is always ready to grab a sword and apply magic when the situation requires. After these words, he spells the spell of the icy charm. The gentleman jokes that if he begins to be dragged, he will cut it into pieces. However, he is very surprised by the act of X and asks what he did. The magician twisted in pain and noted that the sword remains in it for a whole month. He asked in surprise why the sword was wedged and as if he had grown to a place as if he were freezing. The third character confesses that he is drawn to crimes, and adds that for a young magician, it is extremely big money. The X tells that the gentleman attacked him. He adds that he tried not to harm him and was forced to retreat far away to make them go. He is concerned that if you try even more, something can happen. The sister came with other heroes who immediately noticed. Fighting 3 against 1 is unfair. For the first time, the hero notices that he sees the manager of the restaurant. The manager brings his eyebrows in surprise, recognizing the hero's voice, and the waitress smiles happily. The manager accuses Pansa of cowardice and asks if he just wants to hide. He adds that before you say something, you must act first. The hero reminds that the last month has not yet been paid. The third day has passed from the payment term. The Pan notes that he believes that he will be able to avoid punishment if he makes the manager with his enemy. The girl, in turn, with a smile, adds that these two are better than most adventurers. The hero gladly notices that after strengthening his knife became even sharper. Another character, stunned and indignant, exclaimed that he would break the magicians into pieces. The detachment of the heroes confidently declares his readiness for the battle. The Pan in response reminds that the jokes should not be taken too seriously. The hero asks to wait a little, and assures that he will surely thank, only a little later. Exiled waits for the hero to apologize to him. ICS cannot be surprised to understand how this happened. She also points out that they themselves received what they deserved. Other characters admire the hero enthusiastically, expressing gratitude and admiration for his courage. X thank both for their help. The manager hopes that today the hero will visit them. The girl happily assures that she is very happy about such a meeting. The waitress asks what to cook for him. X proposes to prepare a special dish called hanji. He adds that it will end if this little sorcerer intervenes in their business. The gentleman replies that at first they will have to pick up a few more people and then study them well. The girl happily reports that the news of the murder of the forester has finally appeared. The hero also rejoices in this news. The group enters the Devil's Forest. Immediately in the middle of silence, they notice something unusual, which makes them stay in surprise. He asks what's going on here. The gentleman notices that there is no magic stone on Earth. The young man is surprised to know that the demon is still alive. The hero regrets the words of apology and asks for help, and then disappears, leaving everyone in surprise. The message of the forester was false, and all this time only XCS was engaged in this business, and others only assigned his merits. Now, when it became more difficult, they cannot cope. Due to this, the demons remained intact, and the extra time they were calculating was lost. Shu was banned from picking magical stones belonging to demons, but the newcomers did not even know it. It turned out that Elfman was a traitor. Since then, the young heroes of the guild, known as zombies, have lost their reputation and have been in disgrace. The hero sighs with disappointment, because he just found he lost his wallet. The man invites the hero to take up the client who has previously refused their services, but the Pan immediately rejects the idea. Pan assures that the store will still appreciate the sword, even if they were not used. He adds that they will definitely give him as much money as needed. He also asks 1 gold coin. The hero strictly forbids to touch the sword and assures that he will return for him a month. The hero assures that he will return the sword during the bonus period next month. Pans think why you had to get such a big account in the restaurant, especially if the award does not come. But that day the hero did not come again. The Bogretsky notices that Vicomte is in a high mood today. He is wondering if something good happened at the ball. Vicomte explains that the device creates a cool breeze. The young man immediately remembers the tube with the ice and the magic of the wind, which he was presented with an inept magician. Bradley noted that the princess showed special interest in the gift. This is a great pleasure in him, because now he will be able to gain a good reputation. The hero confesses that there is one problem. X is no longer like an adventure. Viscount proposes to invite the artist to perform at home. He adds that the unemployed and impoverished loser magician would be glad to know about the opportunity to work on him. The butter agrees, calling it a good idea, and promises to fulfill the plan. The hero, in turn, tells that as his first task, he has already produced 200 identical pipes. Viscount notices that the hero learned an important lesson in him. The young man thanks him for his support and help. The hero notices that only the X is able to light the extinguished magical light again. In addition, he complains that he has a headache, although the task has already been accomplished. The Bogretsky asks the maid what happened. She explains that the ice in the largest compartment number 7 began to melt, and asks to bring a new one, as soon as he is ready. The hero proposes to destroy everything in the 7th freezer compartment. However, the objects created consider it a waste, and advise to call the wizard to replace, instead of destroying everything. Dvoretsky noted that the magic of the owner of the Axis was really special. He stressed that no one else would be able to create such jugs from which the water would flow continuously. The maid confessed that she had no idea how powerful X. The hero explained. The magic used by X, in fact, belongs to the simplest. However, its action lasts surprisingly long. It works immediately to preserve the prestige of the family. The Bogretsky agrees to help him with this, promising a generous reward and a place at a family table. X approaches the mailbox and notices a soft toy inside. X announces that he will now get a rabbit warrior and adds that there is nothing surprising. He says that Ryuk's house is literally littered with plush rabbits from a sewing workshop. The hero notices that all toys look the same, but for Ryuk, each rabbit is unique, and it easily distinguishes them. X recalls how she said she could do without his help, and begins to suspect that something is wrong here. The hero decides to go to Ryuki's workshop. The guy took advantage of the key that could get from Ryu to get to her workshop. X opens the door and apologizes that it is disturbing. The hero notices that Roika is also a magician, like himself. The hero tells that magic is an illogical thing. It comes from the land of eternal void. Each type of magic has its own sphere. For example, on the plains a fire always burns, and in the icy valleys different frosts. Magic connects our world with the earth of the emptiness, and through it the usuality of those who live in this void manifests itself. Mag uses a magical element in its body to lay a tunnel between our world and the world of void. For everything, he enters into an agreement with a resident of the emptiness, allowing you to create a hole in his body. Such forces rarely respond to what people actually seek. Ryuk had a special gift. She was a doll. But when the emptiness took away her all the most expensive, Ryuk remained at all one. The only victim she brought was her phobia communication with others. The hero notices that this guy became a friend of Reiki, but also feels jealous. It was this man who deprived her of her courage, so that others could not approach her. X tells that they became friends with Ruki the day he first heard his voice. There is a small animal like a hare at the door, holding the yarn of yarn firmly in the paws. The hero notices that the animal fell precisely because it went, entangled in the threads. Ryuk approaches the animal, helps her get up, and she is slowly moving forward. She asks to wait, watching everything that is happening. X said hello to Ryuk and said he had come to visit. The girl rejoiced in the visit of the hero, but joked that he had to at least call the door. X recalls that he had already called a call, but she did not hear it. Then the hero turns to Ryuk and asks why she is so excited. Ryuk says nothing special has happened. She asks to wait a little and returns to the X. A small rabbit was buried under the litters. The hero looks carefully at the Ryuk, and, having a little discord, she silently agrees. Ryuk admits that she was afraid to ask him. She asks the hero whether he is happy. The hero notes that he is not long here, and the rabbits have started to run and cannot stand. He apologizes, and adds that he did not even imagine how bad everything would get when the extra score for intelligence disappeared. X gladly notices that the rabbit has got free. Ryuka thanks XSSU for his help. The girl says that they can complete everything. At that moment, the hero confesses that he first begins to feel like a real hero. The girl looks in surprise, and X smiles and reassures her. Everything is fine. We can assume that everything is decided. The hero confidently states that he can only help them in this situation and invites him to rely on him. A small animal with excitement uses acceleration and exclaims every time, "Bust!" X shows on the last door, calling everyone to listen to him. There are many small animals in the room. The hero replies that he does not want to work here, and immediately expresses his disagreement. He says everyone has already come together and he has no other choice. The girl gently hugs the hero behind, pressing him with all his soul. The hero laughs and confesses that he does not know when she finally calms down. X is interested in Ryuk what she is doing now. She reminds the main hero that he heard her words. She explains, "When dolls do not do a difficult job, it becomes difficult to control them." Then the heroine only proposes to work when he desires it. The girl assured that everything was not the way he imagined and advised him to rest a little. X apologizes and admits that he was a little tense. The hero feels a pleasant aroma of tea and notices how his thoughts become calmer. Ryuk asks whether he was able to calm down. X thanks her and confirms that now she really feels better. She adds that it is a large silver coin as a reward and offers to accept it. The hero sincerely thanks for such a generous gift. The girl says it is difficult to get back to a simpler life when she is used to the best. She adds that you have to do complex and unpleasant things again, as it was once. It can be noted here that the tea is really delicious, and also to mention that the magic of the hero is simply extremely comfortable. The girl asks if the hero is really listening. Ryuk offers another award. She apologizes to the hero. He warns her so that she does not play food. Ryuk looks confusedly, not understanding what is happening, but still takes food and begins to eat. The servant informs the chief chamberlain that the report has already been prepared. He asks whether the magician is not rated, and he is considered defective. The young man honestly confirms, yes, this is really the case. The hero notes that from the inside of a charming device, donated by a princess at an evening reception, is constantly blowing a cool breeze. It is suspicious of him. And suddenly, this item hides some secret weapon. The grandfather asks what the hero has thought about, and adds that the desire X is just not to want to work. Grandpa suddenly hears someone's voice and asks who it is. He is surprised when he recognizes the princess's voice, and the girl suggests just approach and ask him personally. He notices that the weather is disgusting today. The hero hears the knock on the door and thinks of who can be. She hopes that ICS is still there. The girl tells that the other day she failed to persuade the hero to become an adventure seeker again. The girl explains that she is now with guildmaster. She assures that if the hero begs in the X, he will surely apologize to him. The head of the guild confesses that they have caused her a lot of trouble, but let it be. She confirms, X resigned because of the meaningless requirements of Viscount. The man offers him 10 gold coins for the task, and also an exclusive contract with a higher salary. But the nobleman only asks if they believe that the hero will return after such an attitude. The master offered 100 gold and conclude a unique contract. He adds that it is even more expected, but the hero may remain dissatisfied because of distrust. He also offers his help, however. There will be only 5 gold coins for it. Mr. Jesmond felt relieved when the master assured him that it was not necessary to worry at all. He laughed, and XS struck does not hide his surprise. X confesses that he left everything and asks the interlocutor to leave, assuring that he has nothing more to say. The master reacts irritated, calling the magicians. He adds that almost all the money was spent on buying a new home. The hero confesses that he is not even concerned with the fate of another character in the guild. He also adds that she could give an X, rank AR, though he would do so reluctantly. The master recalls that when the X was in the rank E, they had a good work together. The guy helped and generated income. He assures that they will not interfere with anyone. The owner invites you to go inside to discuss everything alone. The hero replies that he has overcome such a long way for the sake of this meeting. X asked not to bother him. Guildmaster asked in surprise what he said. The hero firmly states that he does not want to do it. He adds that they probably should leave here. However, the girl reminds that they came here to apologize. Guildmaster apologized and promised that he would do everything as he asked Mr. X and personally asked him. X notes that people perceived the words God seriously. The hero says that now that they fulfilled their mission, it's time to go on. The master reports that there will be a place in Class A for Mr. AKA and invites him to return to the guild. The hero with delight asks if the wonderful class of A. X strongly states that he will never return again and asks to let him go. The young man confesses that a place in a guild is just another thankless task. Guildmaster asks to wait and listen to him, and ICS rejoices that he was finally able to share this with this person. The young man feels much better. The mentor decides to review her job responsibilities. At the same time, she invites Mr. the Accessory to go with her on a date. The hero notes that EX has changed his mind, and it delights him. X adds that if they don't go right now, he will leave the city. The man replies that they have already sat down to rest and are going to retreat, but asks not to hurry them. The girl looks after him in surprise, and her husband is quietly turning and going away. He sincerely desires success to his colleagues in his work. After that, the X decides to share with the backpack what he has just done. The girl turns to the guild writer and asks him to wait. She adds that if the hero went to another city, they would have a chance. Guildmaster is aware that he has already spent the reward, so he cannot simply release Axel for the sake of these people. He also understands that if the Axel is affected, Viscount will certainly punish him. The man reassures her, saying that he has a secret plan. The master takes all responsibility and asks the adventurer to wait for 3 days, and the girl decides to use her spells and likes to achieve the desired 3 days. The hero thinks whether it is time to get a charming artifact hidden in a hidden room at the warehouse. He thinks that using such a powerful thing for this situation is almost wasteful, but there is no other choice. The charming artifact is the Ring of Slavery. The one who puts it loses 1 level of magic immediately. The ring absorbs his mental energy and forces himself to obey telepathic orders that cannot be ignored. The owner says that the hero will pay for dared to go against him. He adds that it is a test for an inexperienced magician, which is only capable of the simplest spells. The hero began to list the levels of magic. The highest is advanced, then medium, then basic, and the lowest, 0 level. He also explained that the ring prevents a lot of magical power. He doubts whether this is the protagonist. The man decides that he should at least master medium-level magic. The main guild is surprised that he laughed so many times with Aksa. Then he asks the team to wait, and assures that they have money. The man notices that he is a guild hiding place, and confesses that he never thought that he would become a fugitive because of his actions. He adds that this is quite risky, because they will have to go through the demonic forest. The hero is aware that he needs to get out of here and start life with a pure sheet. He thinks of whether the gloomy forest of Stark will be able to overcome. He is wondering that it is a new protection he has heard of, and is surprised because he sees only a rough piece of iron wire. The head of the guild honestly confesses that he did not even suspect that the city has such protection in general. The hero understands that this trick does not affect people, which means that he just needs to climb through the wire. He is surprised to die, impressed with the loud magical explosions of X. Dvoretsky notes that if Jesmond tried to escape, then he failed to cope with the task of the king. Guildmaster is wondering if he built an electric fence. In response, the young man notes that the forest protection is under Vicomte's protection. The Dvoretsky notes that the forester also does his work honestly. The hero tells that in fact, all the hard work on the construction of the fences had to be done, even with all the actions. He adds that all this is only an elementary electrical discharge, which, however, lasts unusual. One person, threatening the prisoner, suggested that he go to the Foam of Gold for 5 years as a punishment, because he had 5 coins. The guild found them with the master, and they returned the money, after which they left a guildmaster. But the butterfly opened something else interesting. He proposes to leave the ring to himself, but puts one condition: he should wear it on the finger. Guildmaster resists because he does not want to put on the ring, but he still has to answer for his actions. The Dvoretsky orders to send the owner to work in the mine. The man feels heat slowly leaves his body. The hero accidentally meets the Dvoretsky on the street, and immediately realizes that they have not been seen for a long time. The basketball player is wondered if the hero has left guild. He adds that he has already received a prepayment for this work, so now the PHC has no right to refuse to complete the task. But no matter how much he was offered a reward, he stubbornly refuses to take the case of Vicomte. The Dvoretsky finally realizes that he was failed. Guildmaster did not give him any gold coin from the money he received. The young man is convinced that this man will definitely pay for his lie. The guildmaster feels the burden of its ring, and can only be removed when it is punished. He realizes that he has been waiting for him for 5 years of difficult life in harsh conditions. But he does not know that, having learned about the deception, Jesmond secretly added to his term for another 100 years. Viscount reminds that the day of meeting with the princess is no longer around the corner. It emphasizes how important it is to finish the work quickly, because you need to have time to make and prepare 200 tubes as a gift. He proposes to consider sending someone else to this task. The young man agrees, but adds that he was told, such as an XSU. Another character with an insidious smile proposes to steal a young magician, showing her trick and willingness to act dishonestly. The characters gathered together to discuss their action plan. In the conversation, one of them calls Urakar the king of the slum. During the discussion, they decide to use this person for their own purposes, although the other hero is not sure of such a decision and asks again to think well again. The young magician was already captured. The liar confidently states that it is quite simple to allocate a room in the basement and be treated with respect, and the guy will certainly change his mind. Window, with surprise and admiration, responds about the idea, calling it interesting and quite well thoughtful. Other characters join his opinion, although one of them still doubts whether the hero really intends to implement this plan. He notes that to steal people is a bad idea, and emphasizes that their plan with a bait will certainly work. Viscount believes that to abduct a person is a thankless and complex business, so he suggests just calling goals. He adds that it is best to lure the victim into a trap by using a charming woman as a bait. The hero fades in surprise and confusion as soon as he hears the word bait. Rakara notes that every criminal organization has its own specialization, and their group is known through ill treatment. He emphasizes that they do not have attractive women who could fulfill such a plan. He confidently orders his people to gather everyone, ready to act without delay. But as soon as he was brought by his subordinates, the Urakar does not hide his shock. A little girl looks alarmed and weakened. The older woman with warmth replies that despite her years, she feels young inside. And next to them is a pregnant woman who looks gently at both. The hero seeks to find a person who would help him to fulfill his idea, but confesses that he has no one. He frankly admits he does not even imagine who could approach him. The heroine, with annoyance, throws that again all the questions will have to be resolved. Another hero is greeted with her in her way, calling her younger sister. In response, she reacts restrained and dry, clearly dissatisfied with all this. She confidently emphasizes that he is his girlfriend, so he may rely on her. This reveals their trust in each other and shows emotional connection. The heroine explicitly says that Urkara is the only one she loves. Urar is convinced that she is really special, and this was the reason why he fell in love with her. However, the hero is hesitant. He is worried about how much a girl who was offered to be involved in the plan is actually attractive. He asks if she can cope with this task. The hero decides to check his confidence by throwing the coin. If the eagle falls, he will choose this girl, and if the recity, will have to look for someone else. The man twisted a coin in his hand, but suddenly she slipped and fell on the floor. He was very annoyed. He grunted that because of this little thing he had lost both mood and all his focus. The boy notices that the hero dropped the coin, and immediately points to him this mistake. Although the coin was not on his side, Urkara insists, the decision has long been made. The guy hesitates to become a bait, justifying that he is a guy and cannot fulfill such a role. The girl reproaches the hero for his nagging and reminds that it was she who borrowed his favorite clothes. The man turns to the girl, calling her sister, and then notices the second hero, but hesitates, because the appearance does not allow him to determine immediately whether the guy is or a girl. The hero confirms that he is actually a guy, even if his appearance can beat from the panther. The sister guesses that H. She notices that the other character behaves carelessly and perceives it as something good. The girl notices the pretty stranger next to the X and asks who she is. Another character notes that their plan will not succeed because of the presence of this girl. He advises everyone to go home. The sister confidently confirms that now the advantage is on their side and insists. She clearly states that for the sake of Urakar is ready for anything, even if it costs her. The group notes that 3 strangers who have previously followed them are now moving in their direction. At that moment, X sees that the backpack begins to be afraid. X asks the girl what they want from him. The girl offers a little fun, smiles, and demonstrates a wonderful mood. Ryuk raises his eyebrows in surprise without hiding her admiration from what he saw. The teddy bear notices that while the hero was walking, someone has penetrated his personal space without permission. In particular, he draws attention to the fact that among the uninvited guests there is a man, and it is quite amazing all the heroes. He emphasizes that the circumstances have changed, and now they can no longer act as before. The guy adds that the number of people is no longer important because they were exposed. The guy confesses that they tried to catch the hero on the bait, and now understands. Their plan did not work. He is disappointed that everything would be good if the girl did not appear. One of the characters turns to the characters. He asks them to pretend that everything has succeeded, and proposes to go to Viscount to decide what to do next. The guy thinks that it is better to become a volunteer than to be captured. The man agrees and emphasizes. It is important to take care of his sister's good reputation, so as not to harm her honor. The young hero strongly refuses to fulfill the proposed plan, directly stating that he does not want to participate in it. The sister decides to go, noting that everything could have happened differently if everyone adhered to the original plan. The team of heroes acknowledges that everything came out of control and has become too loud. X mentally notes that he did not know such a cunning trap and silently watches the rivals go away. It seems to him that their actions were surprisingly simple and even a little naive. At this point, the Reckon approaches X and says with a smile that he behaved very cool. Urkara was surprised to say that in general, someone can resist such a beauty as his girlfriend. She sincerely apologizes for her mistake. The man annoyedly points out that X interferes with him. At this point, a guy who may know the magician. Urkara replies that he was ordered to deliver the guy to Vicar, emphasizing how serious the matter is. He offers his help, asking what the guy wants in return. The guy agrees and adds that he still needs a cold medicine. He believes that this medicine is needed for a child who has just left. The child confidently states that everything is decided. Rikara still doubts. It does not look like him, because he has never interfered with children. The girl notices that her boyfriend found a way out of a difficult situation. He firmly states that he will no longer participate in such manipulations, and will not use other people, especially his girlfriend, for his own purpose. The hero thanked the Axova that he came to Viscount, and asked if he could get to work again. But the magician began to be annoyed. The young hero is indignant when people use others as a bait. It is especially shocked by how easily children can be involved in it, and he does not understand how possible it is possible. The servant notes that this may be a mistake, but the hero accuses him of attempting to evade responsibility, despite the obvious facts. Then Xyz says he heard about a drug agreement for a sick child. The servant accuses Urukar of his brutal attitude towards children. The guy, not paying attention to the reproaches, is delighted to say that for the sake of a friend, he is ready to go for anything. This X only replies, which despises everyone without exception. Visconti pleases the Axel, and in his voice there is pleasure and relief, as if he had been waiting for a long time when the hero finally appeared. The man understood that the young man would certainly fall into the trap. He strictly ordered the hero to start work, once again making sure that all his instructions were clear. The hero confidently rejects all the requirements, clearly stating that he will never obey this person. X confidently states that he will never forgive this attitude towards children. He proposes to return home and promises to buy medicine for his friend, so showing his care and desire to help. The hero named ICS was already going to go, but Visconti stopped him. He asked to wait and suggested talking again. There are rumors from the emergent. Visconti is somehow used children for their purposes. Because of this, his reputation was seriously injured. People are increasingly distrustful of him. The girl in a sophisticated dress happily announces that she is now going to a meeting with a great magician. Grandpa's surprised that the princess herself went to X. The guards regret that they could not stop Princess Lulu in time, because she went around them so quickly that they did not even have time to do something. The senior character thinks whether he was mistaken, seeking help from the princess. Princess Lula is the third princess in the family. She is only 12, and she is a little younger than her sisters. Lula has a sincere and intelligent face, and one day she even brought with her a wonderful thing. She tells that it is a gift from Visconti, and compares it with a cool and incredibly light breeze. The man is wondering what it is, and jokingly invites the girl to give it to him. The ramp felt something strange, holding a mysterious object. He focused and used his ability to estimate the level of danger. Just one. Still, the ramp could not understand why this item causes such an unusual feeling. Grandpa notes that by this point, nothing has attracted their attention in the city. Now he asks for permission to take another thing for a moment, but he immediately warns, "Let it be careful, because it belongs to her sister, and it is impossible to break." Herman's hero suggests that a new kind of magic tool is in front of him. While in the Royal Laboratory of Magical Technologies, he carefully analyzes the circumstances. The hero learns that the same night, at the dinner, the princess purchased a mysterious thing at the order of Viscount Roderick. It is surprising. Where aristocrats can know something about such things? Even the hero himself has not yet understood the details of this story. Herman notes that the object in his hands is extremely light, and has wondered if it can be disassembled. But the grandfather immediately warns his grandson, warning, if he does, the princess will be very angry. The guy thinks whether the formula is written directly on a charming stone that has the shape of a cylinder. He begins to talk about demonic tools and special relics, at the same time noticing small ice flows inside the cylinder, and also emphasizes that the wind passes through the crack. The hero replies, but with surprise he notes that he cannot find what should be in place. Grandpa, noticing his confusion, asks what happened. The technician says that there is no thing inside the cylinder. It looks astonished and upset, emphasizing that something is wrong here. Grandpa agrees and adds that it is a really simple profession, although he himself engraved in the past. The hero immediately explains that he was not about engraving. Herman notes that there is no magical formula or energy source inside the cylinder, even a trace of magical stone. He explains that these are not ordinary magical tools, but a whole structure, inside which there is an icy ball and built, in magic of the element of the wind. The hero admires that such a device really seems incredible. Grandpa agrees that if this thing is really related to 11, they just don't know how to use it properly. The princess confidently stated that it was probably the case of the hands of a large sorcerer. However, his grandfather disagreed with the girl and denied, in his opinion, it is rather the consequences of a simple basic spell that has been in operation for a long time. It is completely ready to go for this subject, emphasizing how important it is to perform this action. Princess with determination states that it is necessary to hand this upper gift as soon as possible, because it will be a real surprise for her. The Bogretsky decides to hire an illusionist. The investigation reveals the story of a young man who does not want to work. The princess advises to turn directly to the hero to find out his story, because only he can give accurate answers. She is sure that a person who does not want to work must explain his motives himself. He suddenly realizes that he may not notice the obvious way out, and now proposes to organize a meeting with Aksa in the near future, if possible. Grandpa notes that the princess has hurried too and went to the hero without thinking properly. Dressing in villa, Lulu notes that the right place should be quite nearby. The princess approaches the X and is interested in what he is doing, and he explains to her that he is looking for a baby to give her something. The girl gladly offers her help to the hero in search of a child, showing true perseverance and willingness to act immediately. The hero suddenly notices that the girl suddenly broke from the place and ran away, leaving him. He is confused and alarmed, does not understand where she went. The girl runs to the cat and says that he may love the barbecue, so she can treat him with this taste. The characters notice that the cat does not want to touch the barbecue. At this point, X asks what she does here, wondering her appearance in such a situation. The child recognizes his brother and happily exclaims it. Nita asks another barbecue that the hero holds in his hand. He explains that he has just bought a rain medicine. He confesses that even having work and money, he still bought medicine. He adds that he hurts to look at his interlocutor. The hero is convinced. Because of such behavior, he is considered suspicious. X hopes Lulu will find the one he is looking for. The girl turns to the hero, calling him a great magician. The hero seems and says he is a magician who was once called. The girl apologizes and sincerely regrets her words. She confesses that she dreamed of asking the one who created this thing to do the same for her. X assumes that everything was done at the request of Viscount. The hero describes the object with a smile. Yes, he is really cool and light. He confidently confirms this is his own work. The girl learns in surprise that the hero is able to create another same subject. Surprised, she asks 2 such artifacts at once, and the hero is readily agreed. Lulu exclaims with joy, learning that she really is the one she was looking for, the great magician H. She sincerely shares her delight from this meeting. The hero confesses that he has only the simplest magic, so he was not destined to become a great magician. X shows its skills, creating a spell, lifting the wind and launching an icy ball, and the girl is delighted to watch him. The hero asks the girl not to tell anyone that he possesses magic. He proposes to leave this secret only between them. The girl agrees, promising that it will remain their little secret. The princess thanks the hero, addressing him. The majestic magician of the X, you saved me. X notices that the situation really seems funny, but in fact everything is not so bad. Especially after he managed to prove to everyone today what a wonderful magician. However, the guy understands that it is not necessary to talk about it. Grandpa, with surprise and anxiety, asks the princess where she was all this time. The Bogretsky says that everyone was worried about her long absence. In the meantime, she approaches her grandfather and gives him a gift, jokingly calling him the old man. He notices that this is not the same pipe that they had at first. The princess tells that she appealed to Ix to produce the same things for her. She insists that the royal family cannot remain in debt, and that the service must be thanked. The hero has 2 problems. The first is that he often sees suspicious people near the tavern. Nevertheless, he still refused their proposal. X is worried that he will soon end with money, and this is what becomes the second serious problem for him. He says he can no longer return to eat mucus as before, because his nutrition has changed. The hero even mentioned that yesterday after dinner at the restaurant he ordered his juice. The magician notices that he has warm stones. These are the stones of the heavenly demon, which lies a weak spell of fire. The hero thinks of what to do next. He honestly recognizes himself that he does not want to work, but the money is still needed. X decides to experience his luck in a gambling game, hoping to break the big bush and get rich. The hero explains that the chest is a special thing that helps him to endure time as the action of magic, which increases luck and chances in the lottery, will not go out. At the same time, he notes that his own magic force will remain with him for a long time, showing his confidence in his own abilities. The young man acknowledges that the idea of gambling is bad, but he still considers his strategy cunning, although quite profitable. Nitro suddenly greeted Ix, which was incredibly scared of him. X was even frightened of surprise. The hero asked how his girl, whom he gave the medicine yesterday, feels. At this point, he mentioned that his acquaintance from the potion store seems to be avenged to him for being traded with her for so long. He added that he had already received help, and asked this support to another girl, so she would not be concerned about gratitude. X praised Nitrea, saying that he was a real fellow. The hero confessed that he planned to treat his barbecue, but accidentally touched the wallet. Nitra wondered in Axel whether he had ended with his money, because the medicine was very expensive. He explained that Rye's disease is not a cold at all, but a curse from the fall, and only an Elix elixir can heal it, which is very expensive. The hero reassured that everything is under control, and there was no reason to excite. He suggested taking money to buy for Rye the necessary. He was surprised that it was possible to buy exactly what was always enough for money, and said confidently that everything would be fine. Nitra hesitated a little, but eventually agreed. The hero was convinced that now he did not have a single penny. Nitra sincerely thanks the hero, expressing gratitude for his help and actions. The hero feels peace and relaxation, and this fills his joy and brings deep pleasure. He thinks about how to live on. It is possible to help tomorrow or to oversee the Lena shop. The hero confesses that he has no money, but in his soul warm. X notes that even stones in his pocket became warm. The magician scratches the nape and thinks, what? How to offer their warm stones of some rich, lacking entertainment. The hero, dressed in a sophisticated suit and cylinder, radiates optimism and hope, asking if they were already thinking about dinner. Lula sits at a table with a cup of tea in his hands. She thanks her assistant mentally, because it was thanks to him that they had the opportunity to meet a great magician. Zion, sisterlog, was very interested in who created the cool pipe she saw, and now she wants to get acquainted with this person. Cheyenne confesses that naivety is so great that it even alarming it. They talk about whether they will meet with those who created this mysterious tube. The heroine thinks why her interlocutor still avoided a common meal, and now suddenly invited her to the table. She feels that a mysterious magician has set her own conditions, and now she tries to understand what he has in his mind. Cheyenne also mentions that she has heard that all magicians are weird, and so she is a little worried that some magician can have a bad effect on her younger sister Lul. The mentor agrees, but warns that you should be careful. The girl does not understand what precautions are discussed. Grandpa explains that in the presence of the magician, it is impossible to pronounce the word work. It is surprising for everyone else, because they do not understand why such a strange ban exists. Lulo noticed that the heroic magician clearly does not want to work. She thinks about how unfairly evading her duties and enjoying the kindness of others. Compared to this, it feels like a bird in a cage. Its freedom is limited. The older man strictly warns Mishayan so that he does not ask questions about where he comes from, why he does not work, and when he plans to start working. He emphasizes that such questioning is strictly forbidden. Lula asks his sister, and he answers that he understands everything. But the girl notices, in the smile of the sister there is something strange. The hero looks around, not understanding where he is leading. He still cannot believe that he has been in such a luxurious carriage, and is overwhelmed by excitement and admiration. Thank you that they were with me and looked at this story. The young man assures the hero that it is only accompaniment. In the soul of the hero, a strong desire to return home is born, and he also suggests that the person he had to meet may have a noble origin. X confesses that he had already been in this place earlier, but he could not think that it was here that they were destined to find themselves. The hero is surprised to learn about the secret paths that are known only to the closest people. A friendly servant in a perfect suit and cylinder with a gesture invites the participants to enter inside. He asks if everything is fine with the magician, looking at him. The magician himself is even more surprised and does not seem to find words for answer. The hero thinks whether this place serves as a portal for teleportation, although the cafe is in a cozy and distant corner. He confesses that he did not expect to find a secret door here. The servant began to be nervous, reminding that if they did not rush, they would be late. The hero tells him that this is his first movement in space, and already imagines how he sways in front of friends Roika and Idol when he returns. One day a group of people meets a hero. One of the characters politely asks the hero to go to the specified door, thus telling what to do next. The former residents of the city came here only for delicious food, but did not expect to witness such a spectacular action. The hero suddenly notices a girl among the whole company. Lula exclaims, recognizing the hero as a great magician, and does not restrain his admiration and respect for his glory. X notices Lulu, and recalls how she helped him at one time. He thanks to another character for being invited today. However, he just waits, they say. He is just a servant here. The hero also notices that the second girl is vulnerable to her sister, paying attention to their similarity in appearance. The girl introduced herself as a Shion and introduced the hero to her sister Lulu and their butterfly. She thanked the rescuer, addressing him as a great wise man. The hero confesses that he is not a very skillful magician, and often hears in his address that he is a faulty magician. However, Lula insists, if the hero really did everything he is about, he is definitely a prominent magician. Lulus proposes to start dinner, because everyone has already met. Cheyenne thoughtfully notes that not only the taste but also the origin of the ingredients and the status of dishes that serve to the table is of great importance in the circles of aristocracy. The hero notices spoons of different sizes on the table and proposes to choose the largest of them, if possible. He admires that the soup looks incredibly tasty. However, the hero confesses that one of the spoons is not liked. The girl nearby points out, if you use the biggest spoon, it can mean that a person lacks money. X wondered where the sister's parents today. She, together with her grandfather, assumed that he probably decided to talk to the king personally. Lula tells that her parents are constantly busy. The hero sighs compassionately. He is sorry that this is the case. Lula shows a comfortable spoon for soup and explains in detail how to use it. The hero sincerely thanks her for the clue. Meanwhile, Cheyenne thinks whether their conversation was by chance. Sean assures that she will not ask him any questions. The girl thinks whether she did not make a mistake by refusing a gesture, and she is wondering if the hero has something in common with them. The hero notices that the food looks very appetizing, but confesses that he is so full that he cannot eat a piece. X regretted that ate before the journey. The grandfather addresses the hero and is wondering if he has any difficulties. The hero is amazed at such a question and does not immediately understand what they want from him. X tells that he wanted to sell something, showing his interest in discussing this issue. The hero tells that these stones warm up on cold winter days. The girl is wondering how many heroes wants for these warm stones. He says it is just a magic stone with initial fiery magic, Ho01, ordinary and even free material. The hero confesses that it is difficult for him to understand how prices are formed here, and adds that if it turned out, he would like to sell this stone more expensive. Ryuk offers the buyer the opportunity to determine the price of the product independently to sell it more. X supports the proposal and advises to allow the price to be resolved. The girl agrees with this approach and proposes to continue to act on this principle. Lula drew attention to the fact that everything costs only 1 gold coin. She was genuinely surprised to learn that the price was a whole gold coin. She admits that he does not know the correct answer to this question. In her thoughts, she is surprised why the hero, who has already proven his abilities, so longing. At the same time, she understands that if you refuse, the hero can move to their side of the enemy. Lula proposes to return to discuss this issue. Cheyenne agrees with her, adding that the answer can affect his opinion. Lula also claims that only one really believes in a big magician. He suggests that in the best case 7 small silver coins will be enough. The hero assures that even if they get rich, silver will be enough with his head. The 3 characters sat at the table, smiling and nodding as if everyone had been satisfied with the decision. A whole mountain of gold stood in front of them, a common award, which they were clearly proud of. X notes that they suddenly began to praise with their wealth. He confidently states that he will now be able to ask for a large silver coin without any hesitation. The girl turns to the hero and says that he decides what his reward will be. He wondered whether he should choose one of the gold coins, noting that all the coins on the table were made of gold. Cheyenne gives the hero complete freedom of choice. He thought it would be better to take a large silver coin, though he may be allowed to take gold. His surprise caused the number of coins. Why so many of them? Now he began to think about how to find a real one among all fakes. Is that exactly the scion? Miracles that go beyond the imagination? He confesses that he cannot use the magic of the evaluation to determine the difference, and replies that he does not know how to distinguish these items, because they are the same. The girl notices that a strange expression appeared on the hero's face and says they need to hurry. The hero confidently states that this is his deserved award, and is firmly convinced of the correctness of his choice. The girl looks at the hero with doubt in her eyes and asks if he is really confident in his choice. She wants to know if it is a really right solution. Lula approached the Shin, full of faith through the great magician, and thus showed her genuine support and respect. Sheena notices that unwillingness to work did not make the hero greedy. The girl asks the hero, Mr. X, whether he is ready to share her features. She looks at him with interest, making it clear that she wants to know more about his abilities. Its peculiarity is the ability to extend the action of magic, which is very useful in many situations. It recognizes that it is not easy to use elementary magic. The heroine also points out that for serious cases, elementary magic is too weak. X confesses that he once studied high magic, but later abandoned the path. The girl is surprised to know that the hero has abandoned the whole level of magic. She compares herself to a bird in a cage, complaining of the restrictions imposed on it by the royal family. Cheyenne asks if he regrets his choice. He believes that he deliberately chose this road and cannot say whether she was light or difficult. The hero confesses that he always considered himself inept, and feels as it became even less capable with every minute. The girl notices that the hero voluntarily abandoned his benefits. She confesses that she always believed Her fate is to marry the minister's orders, as if it were inevitable. He adds, if the hero is ready to sacrifice his benefits, he will be able to gain true freedom. The girl, calling Lula waiting, boldly states that she recognized the hero as an outstanding magician. Lula strictly tells the hero to never call himself a failure. The hero sincerely thanks the girl for her words, rejoicing and feeling deep thanks. The girl thanks the hero for the well-spent time, confessing that she also liked it. She promises to carefully protect the stones. The girl asks him to visit again. X said goodbye to Lula. The X thought about the conductor who would no longer return. At this point, his gaze fell on a golden jerk. The hero is not sure whether a real coin decides to check it. He promises that if the coin turns out to be real, then will return with 10 large silver coins. Cheyenne looks at a large bunch of gold coins with surprise and asks what to do with them now. The grandfather calmly confirms that in the course of this case, she assured that she would make sure that gold would be in his hands. Ever since Lula has recognized X, he has officially become a great magic family. The X himself has never heard about it before, and considered such stories a fiction. But suddenly, it was included in the list of the most influential magicians. The Academy of Magics is a large organization that resembles the Guild of Adventures. Documents show that 11 is ranked 9th. The hero expresses doubt, saying that he has never heard of such a person. He suggests that it can be a king's illegitimate child. The old magician notes that perhaps the princess just joked too much. The employee reminds that they have not yet learned who the 11th is. The magician announces that you need to start searching first, because it considers it meaningless. The Kukortal teacher suits and proposes to help find the missing student. The girl started worldwide searches trying to find out the name X. The search did not give any results. It is evident that X does not work now. The curtain with surprise and disappointment notes that nothing has been found. The documents say that the X once was a participant in the Guild of the Adventurers of the Adventure E. His nickname, Defective Mag. The owl is happy to say that it is all she managed to find out. The old man thinks of what to join the guild at all if you do not plan to work there. The girl advises not to worry and implies that X may have joined the guild only once, just to disguise. Osov again notices the information that the ICS is in the Guild of Adventures, has a rank D and the nickname Failed Mag. This causes a magician to be surprised, because the hero was only recently deprived of his former rank. The curtain denied that it could not concern a person who became a big magician. The girl, however, was in surprise that the choice was very accurate. The girl asked why their anti-magia did not work at all. Anxiety prevails in her eyes, because she does not understand what is happening. The main character thinks what really means when she recalls the great magician of Ix. X studied magic with high elves from Red Forest, and they advised him to join the Adventurers Guild. But when X tried to join their ranks, he was laughter, because he gave up magic. Lula explains that from now on the X, Magus officially became the Magus, because it was she who appointed him with a great magician. The Bogretsky notes that for others, this news will be a real surprise. The characters admit that they do not understand how it all happened, but they have already placed traps to trace the violators. Meanwhile, X is asked how his name is. The hero proposes to call it X, and adds that it seems more correct to use EQ. Another character notes that if you do not consider the pronunciation, names are really similar. He expresses his support by the hero. X agrees that walking is good for health. Therefore, he decides to go for a walk and think about what to do today. The girl proposes to spend time together with a backpack, to work or play a game. XS proposes to invite him to join them or buy something for Anitra and her sister Paradise. The protagonist notices that Nitra looks crazy after they found all the treasures in the moat. The guy is wondering if they're meeting with Lena accidentally, or whether it was fate brought them together. The woman extends him dreamy cloud cakes. X confesses that it is worried about other ideas. The hero confirms, yes, it was these delicacies who wanted. In addition, he is told that some nervous girl was looking for him. On this, X only shrugs and says that he does not know such people at all. It turned out that the girl did not have any soft toy. The girl says goodbye, and smiling says that Mr. Aksa will certainly return. The hero thinks of who is so persistently looking for him. He asks himself with surprise, are there really people who are capable of this? The other girl exclaims joyfully, because she finally found this magician. X notices fear in the girl's eyes and thinks it seems to have met her somewhere. The girl appeals to the hero to impose as soon as possible on her an amplifying spell. He adds that these reinforcements were clearly superfluous. In response, the hero says that he does not want to use the spell of reinforcement. It is better to relax a little than to waste and continue the same. She is also wondering how much he has to pay the hero, or whether he needs money. X notices that everyone looks closely at them, and advises her to think carefully about whether she really needs this spell. The girl again appeals to the hero to repeat the same, because only he was special, and only he can. The girl assures that he is the most popular in the city and is ready to prove it, giving way to her own body. The other girl strictly orders the first to move away from the hero, taking a protective posture and clearly showing her dissatisfaction with such behavior. X appeals to another girl and asks if she is a dream, glorified by the adventurer of the rank S. He is curious about whether she plans to help him. Mara gladly announces that 11 will stay overnight. The girl categorically refuses to stay at night with the first girl. At this point, Mara uses a shadow bird spell. The girl begged the hero not to go, but she was firmly held by Mary's magic. The hero notices that the place where he fell was surprisingly convenient, even the best for the most expensive pillows he had ever seen. Mara persistently requires additional reinforcement, showing his perseverance and desire to gain new magical forces. The girl proposes to tell the hero about her activities so that he can choose consciously and without haste. Sarah says that only a few days ago she was affected by the idea of a great old woman. The protagonist thinks whether she actually exists. Hidden under dark hood and known in many names, it embodies the desire for eternity. It is called a witch window whose body is closed in the void. She sees what has been waiting in front, and for thousands of years he has traveled to this world. All this only adds mysteriousness and raises even more questions about who it really is. The hero calls for peace, listening carefully and avoiding certain actions. He also talks about a new form of protection called Forest Guard. A special mascot called Buff 1-inch will help overcome the obstacle that appeared on the way. She adds that this was what the witch had previously said. X is upset that all magic ended because of this. Gray sighs with relief and thanks him. She thinks whether it was so stubborn to defend her opinion, and the X is apologizing for her in all this story. The girl calls her name, Mara Ion, and emphasizes that it is not because of the charms of the X. She confesses that she feels bad now. A girl who seems like Mara Ion confesses that she becomes bad without magic extested. Sarah appeals to the hero for a request. Let him do anything with her, because she does not earn anything until she sells her research. However, ICS reassures her, emphasizing, there is no point in making nonsense, because he will still pay her money after selling the results of her work. The girl sincerely thanks the hero for the support. He explains that protection is magical in nature, so it is impossible to find out its true structure. The hero also adds that he arrived in the city for this reason, to personally understand the rumors of a new type of protection. He adds that it was just a deafening blow. The hero explains, lightning created by magic is energy without its own power source. It exists only through the skill of technology. The girl thinks whether she chose the wrong way. She confesses that magic is perhaps unattainable, but to create electrical discharge is quite under the power of science. X asks Cheese why she works so hard. It replies that the main reason for its diligence is the feeling of own mission. Raw admits that it may seem like a baby's nonsense, but she sincerely seeks to become an outstanding person to whom everyone will be equal. She asks if she offended him. The hero understands why she has to work and considers it quite normal. In response, Mara confesses that he really does not want to do it. The girl confesses that it is very difficult for her to forget the sincere gratitude of the children. Mara thanks ICSU for his help and support. The main character suggested that once again. They gladly noted that it was fun and fun. The hero finally states that he has come to play. He notices that Ryuk almost never leaves home, but despite this, he still goes inside. The hero explains the backs that he came here to just play, though he realizes that it may seem a surprise for her. A girl with a cake together with other characters fun greet the hero. They sincerely congratulate him with achieving the status of a great magician, expressing joy and admiration for his success. The guy reminds Ryuza that she was wrong, suggested to read the newspaper. Ryuk replies, "Here he is," and points to the hero. The hero refutes these words, insisting that it is not him, but Mr. Etches. The hero points to the headline in the newspaper, where the name X is written in capital letters. Ryuk, who was standing nearby, asked in surprise that she was going on here and to what all this circus. A large cake was adorned on the table, and the hero assured her that he was delicious. X proudly proclaims himself a great magician, confidently trying on this new role. The girl wondered when she was going back to work, hinting that they needed to continue their business or meetings again. Ryuk is interested in the hero whether he is going to leave, emphasizing that his money will end quickly. The hero is surprised that Ryuk has already coped with work and even baked a wonderful cake. The girl says cheerfully without hiding her delight. He confesses that he sold a warm stone for a gold coin, showing that he was lucky in trade. X replies that it is his thing and can be used with other things. The bear proposes to use this decoration for heating. Ryuka proposes to use the old pocket watch for this, noting that its metal is quickly heated. X suggested to give the bear's bear, but he immediately denied that the baby would burn. Ryuk also asks the hero not to treat the animal roughly. X soothes the girl, explaining that there is no reason for excitement, because the magical flame is different from the usual and will not harm. The hero assures that the flame, which gives the tree of charm, will not turn it into coal, so everything here is absolutely safe. The little animal suggested trying something new, and the hero eagerly agreed to her idea. Another animal-like animal also joins the competition. At that moment, the icy addiction and outbreak of joyful thirst for life are intertwined. The hero pronounces a spell that fills the hearts of the characters with the warmth of the summer. Two cute animals, like soft toys, joyfully radiate happiness and pleasure. Ryuk hugs one of the animals, calling it a godfather. She says it is so warm, demonstrating her tenderness and care. The girl noted that the animal seems alive, and the hero honestly confirmed it. X gladly saw that his idea liked everyone. The girl asks the hero to leave. The hero jokes, asking whether she does not be jealous of the doll, but adds that caring for a doll is her duty. The hero is convinced that the case really concerns the cake. He asks if he can help. The girl appeals to the hero to listen to her. She confesses that there is one place where she really wants to get. The hero solemnly reports that he came for a backpack. Happy, with a smile, he exclaims her name. The backpack, with surprise and joy, answers the greetings of the characters. Her face is instantly lighter, and she smiles sincerely without waiting for such a meeting. The girl tells that the music festival will take place in Shiptong. She confesses that she was so excited that she could not even sleep last night. The hero in response says it will be fun. The hero notices that the driver is in a great mood. He says the only way to get to a nearby town is to go a cage, and he cannot but thank Ryuk. The hero asks Ryuk if she left rabbits at home. Ryuk is worried because he has never been on vacation before. Kuma reassures her and promises that the characters will then apologize to other toys. The young man notices that Vicomte has already promised to distribute these pipes of the nobility, and the time remains less. He insists that X should make 200 such pipes as soon as possible. The girl looks at the boy in surprise and asks who he is, because she is very interesting to know more about him. He adds that it is actually a butterfly. The girl replied that this man was already absent for 3 days. The Bogretsky believes strange that the girl in the ACS room gives herself a servant, though he often quarrels others for it. At this point, another character, when heard the noise, asks, "Who is there?" The hero is convinced that he saw this man somewhere before. At this point, Nitro pays attention to him. This is the same assistant to Victory. Paradise confesses that in reality it was ill at that moment. The girl confesses that her disease was not a common cold, but a real curse from the light of the headlights. She tells how Mr. Zia came to her help, giving her money to save her. The girl was pleased with the fact that she was allowed to use Mr. AK's room without interference until they find a new home. She noticed that even after the fire she had preserved. The hero confesses that he himself created a false thought about the magician, and adds that this man is really good. Nitra also tells that the big magic often treats her kebabs. The girl turns to the nail and says it should remain a secret. A man is amazed at how to make someone call him a great magic, using only simple magic. The Bogretsky decides to pretend that he has not heard this conversation. The Bogretsky realizes that X, most likely, will not return for a long time, so he says goodbye to the heroes and quietly goes his way. The hero suggests that X is most likely to go to Shiptune. He notices that strict guards at the gate can leave in the records the identification data of all who come in and out. The Bogretsky notices that the territorial army has already reported the situation. He adds that if the grimoire is named X, it must be carefully guarded. Anyone who has no documents should be delayed. The man adds that X is now on vacation, and before going, they agreed to make 200 tubes. He notes that it will be difficult to get out of this situation. The second morning in the small town of Shipton began calmly and measured. X quietly knocked on the door of the room Ryuki. He carefully opened the door and froze on the threshold when he saw her, sleepy and a little disheveled after bedtime. Despite her morning drowsiness, she smiled at him, as if greeted a new day and a real hero, whispered to him, "Good morning." X reported that he had prepared milk for her for breakfast. She gratefully accepted this gesture. They sit on the bed, settling together in the cozy tightness of the small room. The girl apologized to the young man who would not be able to go to the music festival with him, and sincerely regretted that she lost her opportunity to spend time together. X assured her that it was not necessary to worry at all. Everything went perfectly, even better than he expected. He was especially remembered by a trip in a carriage. She brought real pleasure. He once again reminded them of what a long way they had already overcome, and tried to translate the conversation to another topic. In the conversation, he mentioned that guildmaster for an unknown reason destroyed his old map. So now he wanted to create a new one to be able to continue to do his business. She was quite surprised by this confession. Now she finally realized why he had no documents, and why he behaved so unusual. She stood behind, glowing with joy and hope, and she looked at him with a clear annoyance. They continued the conversation, and she confessed that she was really satisfied with how everything happened, because now X has the opportunity to become an outstanding magician. ICS replied to this that he actually dreamed of becoming a merchant and trade in his goods. Lowering his head, he announced that he was going to make a new guild card. Ryuk was sitting on the bed, thinking his fists thoughtfully. She thought for a long time on what was happening, and then suddenly stated that she would go with him. He tried to convince her that there was no need to go with him, but she turned away and said confidently, if she did not go, he would certainly get into the mess. He began to convince her that he was not so weak and could handle herself, that everything would be fine with him. But it was at this moment that a teddy bear flew to him. The bear began to whisper quietly in his ear, telling that it was about girls who could fall in love with a young man, and that Ryuko was scared of such feelings and situations. Standing with a soft toy on his shoulder, the guy thought about her words, and suddenly a new idea appeared in his head that could help solve the problem. He assured the protagonist that everything would be fine, even if he had new friends. And in response, she said she considers them the best friends. X heard her sharp words that he did not understand anything, and thought about this reproach. They walked quietly city streets, looking around with careful eyes. The X was convinced that they would quickly get to the trading guild and just as quickly put their business. And Ryuk went side by side, immersed in their own reflections. She said she felt someone's gaze. When he asked where she was looking at her, she replied that women were watching her. He was immersed in reflection, but Ryuk, who was overwhelmed by anger and dissatisfaction, stopped him sharply. Finally, they reached the trading guild, where they were met by an employee, a young woman with a friendly smile. The boys explained that they only needed a guild card, but the woman noted that without her, it is possible to live normally. The bear, unable to withstand the stubbornness of the employee, intervened in the conversation and firmly demanded that she ceases to rest, and finally agreed at their request. The woman was stunned when she saw the toy that she was saying, and it was at that moment that the X was quickly fleeing so as not to complicate the situation. Returning to Ryukai, he said that even the latest man would be scared if she saw that the bear had spoke. At the same moment, they turned and noticed how the tail of their pursuer was behind. Two strangers were secretly looked out of the wooden box. The hero froze from what he saw. A real fear was born in his heart, because he realized they were monitored. Although they were overwhelmed by the fear, the pursuers apologized. They came to meet and promised not to harm, and even offered to join them on the road, which was quite surprised by the boys. They were told that everything would happen extremely quickly, and in a moment, they were on a huge ship. They were told to go, informed that the gentleman was already waiting for them on board. The heroes have frozen in place, thinking what they are waiting for them in this mysterious place. In a large room, a girl was sitting on a chair, glowing her cheek with her palm. The river did not stay, and asked X who this woman who met them so welcome. Hearing the question, the girl smiled and introduced. She is Queen Amin. The boys politely greeted her, named their names and listened carefully to the queen. In response, she ordered the servants to leave the room. They wondered what the queen could help, wanting to demonstrate their goodwill and respect. The queen replied that she recently received a strange report. Smiling, she confessed that the curiosity had taken the mountain, and she just couldn't resist not to intervene. The Ekling froze from surprise, stunned by such a frank statement. Meanwhile, the queen was comfortable in his chair, as if nothing had happened. She gently leaning her hands on her cheeks, watching the ACS reaction carefully. The queen suddenly became interested in Ryuki's bag, and wondered where she had such an unusual thing. One of the girls has frankly admitted that she is a passionate fan of Crazy Doll, and dreams of finding out how he can get the same bag for herself. The boys thought whether the queen really invited them to find out more about the bag. X looked at her hard, waiting for the answer. Ryuk, with a light smile, noted that ICS is not popular at all, which is why the queen is so sorry for them to look at them. He numbed on the spot and admitted that he was very ashamed of such an assessment. He opened his mouth, as if he wanted to deny, but the words were never found. The legend of the great popularity of the hero has never become public. He hid his face in his palms as if he wanted to hide his inconvenience and internal shame. The queen looked at them in surprise, not understanding why they behaved so strange. She wondered where they had this bag. Ryoko whispered quietly to her companion, who did not want to tell the queen where this bag came from. In the meantime, the hero stood side by side, closing his face with his hands. The heroine is silent without deciding to tell the queen, and X only makes it clear that he has already understood everything and respects her choice. The queen wondered what was happening here, but the young man decided to introduce himself again, so as not to create uncomfortable pauses and explain all the circumstances immediately. He frankly admitted that Ryuk was the author of the Crazy Doll collection, and these words aroused true interest and sincere surprise on the queen's face. The queen, revealing from the surprise of her mouth, confessed that she was a great supporter of Ryuki's work. A little embarrassed, Amin looked up and asked if he could make an order directly in Ruki. In her voice, genuine interest and admiration of the artist's creativity sounded. He began to explain that not only the benefit, but also every client to whom it helps. She put her soul into her business. And it was then that the queen wondered his relationship with this girl. She winked with him and shouted with a smile, assuming that he was Ryuki's boyfriend, which was a little embarrassed by both of them. X was confused and did not know what to answer, and the girl with a funny expression joked that the queen ahead of the event. The queen could not believe her own ears with happiness, exclaimed with joy, and her mood rose even higher, becoming even brighter. She stated that she was in a great mood, and the boys can ask her everything she wants. The guests were stunned by such generosity. The bear whispered to the young man that it was time to take care of the person's certificate, reminding him of important things. Hearing this, the queen asked in surprise whether there was no person's certificate at the ACS. The guy began to explain the situation. She gladly promised to fulfill their desires, and the boys could not believe their happiness. This luck was so unexpected. They were brought to the priest medal. At first, they doubted whether it was really the same thing they were shown before. The queen said that this medal is intended for the chosen, talented people, and he can serve as a distinction for identification. At that moment, the hero nervously pulled the axis by the sleeve, attracting his attention. He turned to her, feeling her support. She looked at the medal with tenderness and said with a smile that everything was perfect for each other. Her view radiated kindness and confidence. He agreed that everything was, and together they expressed their sincere gratitude for her generosity and help. She said that this medal gives various privileges and benefits, and heard really stunned children. The queen was barely noticeably smiling, and began to tell them what was waiting in front. She told them that everyone has the right to a free drink at the bar. The young man, smiling, joked and asked if alcoholic beverages would be on the holiday. The owner wondered if guests were pleased with such a rare honor that could later be a real salvation for each of them. After that, she suggested enjoying the music. The girl froze in place, until her companion explained that she did not love much crowds of people. Such words were surprised at the owner of the throne. The heroine noted that she did not necessarily be present at the festival, and with interest she turned to the young artist. She said she intends to take the musicians on her ship. The listeners, conveniently, enjoyed the melody, and at the same time realized how powerful the influence and the authorities of rich people could be. The young man was stunned and delighted at the same time that happened around him. However, people soon reported that it was time to return to their tent. Going closer, she asked why they didn't want to stay overnight. The bear immediately filed, stating that their home is much more spacious and cozy than it was. His friend tried to reassure him, assuring that everything is under control and there is nothing to worry about. The monarchia with a smile noted that she was really interested in seeing this tent with her own eyes. At the same moment, the ship slowly climbed into the sky. The guy was delighted with what was happening and enjoyed every moment. The alarm level was raised to the 3, and the owner of the thrones hurried to the felling to understand what happened. She shouted scared and rushed to run long corridors, leaving her comrades to wait for the news. With a serious expression, she opened the door and went to the felling, where her interested comrades were silently behind. The queen wondered what had happened, and told her about the appearance of a mysterious castle that arose from nowhere and aroused suspicion. After delving into her own thoughts, she pressed her palm to the door, turned to the young man, and began to tell him what was happening now. Smiling aloud, he explained that the castle he had just told of was actually their tent. The owner of the throne was incredibly impressed by the herd. It became a real shock for her. When the news reached everyone, the alarm was immediately cancelled. They were gratitude for the assistance and transport, to which the queen replied that she was always pleased to reach for help. When she got the castle, she was struck by its size, and she could not hide her admiration. The ruler announced that an important event will take place tomorrow. The young man sincerely supported this idea. They crossed the threshold of the so-called ghost house. Comrades boldly entered the castle. Everyone was delighted with the wealth of shelves and unusual architecture that made this castle really special. A lively conversation about the future of this house began, and the young man suggested staying here for a while, if he wanted. The owner of the throne once wanted to bypass all the corners of his castle, full of curiosity for his every corner. The castle was already dominated by real confusion. Viscount thoughtfully ran his fingers on a glass, thinking when he could finally find the performers. Suddenly, someone called him, and he looked around, meeting a stranger in a luxurious tuxedo, with whom the conversation was immediately tied. The stranger smiled as if he were hiding some secret, and, saying goodbye, he said that he wanted to introduce Viscount to the princess. At that moment, the earl heard the girls discussing him, and this interesting news caused him a smile, because he hoped to hear something pleasant about himself. However, it turned out that the conversation was not about what he hoped to hear. Annoyed, he loudly slammed his fists on the table and exclaimed that he still failed to find an uncontrolled magician, through which the anxiety worked. Viscount suddenly felt a true horror. The young man who stood nearby only sighed upset, expressing his compassion. The annoyed Graf began to swear and shout loudly, warning of the serious consequences that may happen if the problem was not solved as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the young man wondered where the guy could be now, imagining how he sits on a bench and thinks thoughtfully into his own thoughts. He was confused and did not know what to do next, but suddenly he was illuminated by an unexpected idea, and he immediately went to the Academy of Magics. It was there that he was met by a powerful witch. The young man conveyed her business about the missing person, and she, surprised, took the documents, because she remembered the name well. The sorceress confessed that she knew 11, and saying his name with respect, turned to him Lord, which surprised her young satellite. She realized that she knew only one side of his personality, hinting that there is still a lot of unknown. Having released her owl, she loudly announced the start of searches throughout the planet, and reported that he had been seen in the city. The young man replied that there were no reports of border breach in the area, so he did not even see such a possible reason. She said that the big magician laughs at those who try to find it, and skillfully controls everyone around. Hearing this, the young man realized that the missing man was a skilled manipulator, who knows exactly where he was hiding, and would definitely tell others. At this point, a dragon was sitting on the port city in the sky, on whose ridge the rider was sitting. When he came closer to the stranger sitting on the dragon, he immediately noticed the rider and alerted, feeling the threat. The stranger began to shout, demanding explanations. But the knight confidently stated that he finally found the one who they had been looking for so long. He was convinced that he was in front of the X-Rage and rushed at him with his fists. But he was wrong. Meanwhile, in one of the city areas, the girl went next to her mother, and suddenly something unusual attracted her gaze. Many small toy rabbits were scattered on the sidewalk. A crowd of people gathered on a small playground, who watched with interest how the skilled hands of the masters embroidered toy bunnies. At this point, one of the heroes had a conversation when another character approached him, reaching out a hat filled with coins. He reported that they received this money from grateful audience. The man praised his colleague for the initiative, and she noted that people had thrown coins themselves. It was promised that rabbits would be given to those who will tell important information about the ex and girl with a teddy bear. People began to look for any information feverishly, because the desire to get a unique toy was incredibly strong. The plush rabbit secretly hoped that he would be found immediately after arriving in Shiptun, because it seemed that everything was too obvious here. However, their searches were in vain. They never managed to find the right people. It was at this time that an important event took place in the palace. X, Luke, and Amina stood side by side, and then the guy suddenly asked to leave him alone. The queen smiled and noted that it seems to fall. Perhaps because X was the first to approach her. He calmly replied to this that he just wanted to free up a place for Ryuki. She assured that everything was fine, and added that this castle was very convenient for her. Thinking for a moment, she wondered if the next participant had come. At this point, the doors began to open. At that moment, several mysterious figures were included in the room. The characters looked closely at the strangers, and one of them was a smile that he wanted to get an autograph of the Exa. He soon learned that among them was a guy who played the role of Bait. The stranger introduced himself as a Urukar, a king of Sleers, who was instructed to return Ix. He suggested that the young man follow him, warning, if he refuses, everything would turn very bad for him. After delving into his own thoughts, the young man realized that he had no right to be dangerous. He strongly stood up and confidently announced that he would go alone, leaving Ryuk behind. X-Men asks everyone, do not harm anyone but me. Ricard with a smile promised to keep an agreement. The backpack took the boy by the hand and turned to him, and in response she saw only his smile. Without saying goodbye, he left, and the girl was left to stand, looking after him with tears in his eyes. The queen asked the man why the boy was taken away. He replied that he was promised gold for catching those who commit such actions. She suddenly offered him a job, which was very surprised by her husband. She looked quietly and stretched 5 gold coins. The College of Arabar, noticing the authenticity of the coins, laughed. The lucky man agreed to work on Mrs. Ammon. He entrusted to the young man's care of Rai. The door was slammed, and the queen was very pleased because she managed to resolve this issue. Meanwhile, the main character with tears in her eyes rushed to him. He sincerely apologized for her to worry, thanked the queen, and promised to return the money shortly. The girl came to him, and he quietly asked her not to cry. But in response, she looked at him mournfully and strictly ordered to stop mocking her. Looking straight into his eyes, she strongly promised to help. He hugged her firmly and thanked her, not left indifferent to him. He extended the little finger and promised that everything would be fine and that he would start to take care of himself. They promised each other, spilling over the little finger, and the soft rabbit added that it would never leave it. Reika looked at him in surprise, and the rabbit, meanwhile, straightened and smiled proudly. Amin told that she was aware of what had happened and that someone was looking for them. She suggested that they move to her country. He plunged into thought, completely delving into his thoughts. He thought about the void. X was looking at a black ball. Suddenly, a baby appeared in front of him. He cautiously stood on the palm of the former. The guy realized that in fact he still knew nothing about himself, and this emptiness swept everything around him, and the previous sense of joy was only an illusion. He turned to the void and asked what she wanted from him, what he should do for her. The void listened carefully to the words of a young magician, who sincerely apologized for what he once forced her. X promised to fulfill any desire for emptiness, but unexpectedly and for himself was surprised. Suddenly she exclaimed and stated that she dreamed of mucus pillow. The young man looked gently at the baby, smiling sincerely and warmly. Suddenly he turned to Laudet Ryuk, who stood without moving, with a calm and focused look. The girl wondered in surprise what was happening, and her companion clearly replied that they would have to return home tomorrow. Yes, she really believed that they would leave and honestly confessed to herself. She was sad. She asked if she could return next year, because she wanted to preserve these memories. The hero assured that the return is quite possible. It was at this point that the queen noticed that travelers would go on the road tomorrow. She said she would instruct her assistant to disassemble the tent. X in response, he mentioned that he seemed to forget something to repay. In response, she was genuinely surprised, and her face shone with joy. The queen appealed to everyone with a request to give 5 gold coins, and the young man looked at her with surprise. He wondered if she was confident in her decision, and instead asked how they were going to do with those who pursue them. He began to outline his action plan for her by mentioning Viscount. A rough woman sharply expressed her dissatisfaction with her husband and promised to bring the boys just in case. She confessed that she could not guarantee their safety, but immediately assured that she was ready to help them in any way. He thanked her, and at that moment the girl frozen in silence. The plush rabbit carefully wondered if they could go in the queen's carriage, but the boys decided that they needed to think well. Viscount, with a joyful smile, congratulated the owner of the throne. She wondered how he had things, and behind her were Ryuk. A man from the higher world turned and suddenly met with a young sorcerer. The aristocrat offered the applicant to work, promising to pay 3 gold coins. However, he immediately noticed that the young man was clearly dissatisfied. The guy confidently stated that he would never serve such a gentleman. The representative of the nobility was impressed with such a sharp and categorical refusal. At that moment, the owner of the throne reminded him that the young man had already become one of the servants of the shrine. She strictly stated that she would not allow anyone to harm him, and these words were very stunned by the aristocrat. He was just going to deny how suddenly another young man broke him. The new interlocutor asked to listen to his request calmly and persistently, and the ruler listened to him carefully and seriously. He continued to talk about his passion for wine and promised that he would once discover her own wine cellar. After that, the man turned to the aristocrat and sharply asked him to silence. Hearing this, the hostess was genuinely happy and decided to leave the sorcerer alone with the girl. When they walked away, frank dissatisfaction was read on the faces of the nobility. Rising the stairs, he shouted loudly that the young man would still regret his act. The magician himself abandoned the offer, and everyone agreed that it was great. After all, the lord of the city himself was in defense. The girl emphasized that it was his actions decisive in this case, so she asked him to go with her. He looked at her and nodded, agreeing. However, the companion remained serious and did not even let the look. They walked in a calm, quiet street. Returning home, she was immersed in reflection, but did not forget to thank. He replied that she should thank him. She suddenly realized that all this time she dreamed of only one thing: to stop time. With her eyes closed, she sincerely hoped that there would now happen something that would give her the strength to stand before the trials awaited in front. At heart, she finally realized how much she loves him. While she was thinking about it, she realized that she does not want to let anyone else at all. Opening her eyes, she quietly asked if she did not embarrass her with her behavior. The soft toy thought that if it were in place of the guy, it would have long been fled from such perseverance, and the girl, a little annoyed, continued her way. The small animal decided to see that she had not heard anything. Meanwhile, the young man quickly moved in search of mucus pillows. Leaning and trying to stay in the shade of the houses, the main character carefully struck the deserted street. At the entrance to the store, two locals talked about something. Nearlessly reaching the end of the street, he suddenly heard one of the locals declare a reward: a whole silver coin to the one who could find his repository. This news made him stop and turn. Hearing his name, the ACS suddenly frozen on the spot. He was confused on his face. He tried to understand who was calling him and for what reason. However, soon he mastered himself, took a deep breath, and moved slowly. Having departed at a safe distance from the interesting residents of the town, the ACS finally slowed down and plunged into reflections. There were various reasons in his head why they could chase after him. It seemed to him that Windows simply could not put up with the refusal. He was convinced that no one was paying attention to him. His invisible appearance and modest clothing helped him stay in the shade. Rising the creaking stairs to the second floor, X collided with two guards who immediately looked at him with suspicion. One of them, a woman, carefully considered some official document in her hands. He has not yet managed to get over as he was grabbed. The guards shouted at him, and the woman standing nearby said coldly that they were in vain because they had a direct order to deliver him to Vaikunta. Hanging in the air, the ACS tried to convince that he had already met with the Virgin and all the issues had been resolved. However, the guards remained unwavering. They continued to be suspended, not going to release. Behind the semi-open door of one of the rooms, the maid watched what was happening. When she heard that the guards did not pay attention to the boy's explanation at all, she could not stay away and dared to go forward. Leaving the shadow, the girl called her name and, turning to the guards, wondered if their prisoner was the owner of this tavern. The maid watched in confusion of what was happening, but still congratulated Axel as an honorary guest. He calmly answered that he just returned to his room. X was very upset that even a simple road to his own room turned into a real test for him. Paradise, lowering her head, tried to convince the guards of the boy's honesty, insisting that he could not do anything wrong. He tried to carefully pick the words to confirm the girl said, but his phrases were accompanied by long pauses, so the words dissolved in the air and not flying to the guards. The young man's eyes were filled with tears, and in despair he confessed, he no longer has the strength to work. The guards were completely embarrassed. It was difficult for them to believe that they were looking for a person only because of their usual refusal to work. The embarrassed guards went away to discuss what to do next. X, wiping tears out of the eyes, remained near the paradise that stood in the door, is ready to protect her mistress. After wiping his last tears from his face, he looked at the guards with hope, thinking that everything is behind and now he would finally be let in at the hotel. However, no matter how he tried to explain everything, the guards remained adamant. They insisted on, it is only their duty. When the guards grabbed him by the hand, the hero began to break out desperately, trying his best, trying to free himself. He shouted that it was not his business. At the moment when the tension reached its climax, a thin chain suddenly slipped out of his pocket. The metal thing slipped out of his pocket and, having made a light ringing sound, rolled the wooden floor of the second floor, attracting the views of all present. One of the guards leaned, lifted a piece of metal from the ground, and began to consider it carefully. The guards, sincerely surprised, did not hide their surprise and immediately began to ask the hero where he had this metal. In response, he calmly asked him to return this valuable thing, explaining that the metal personally handed him Qin Ming. The guard took the metal in the hands and looked at the name X, carefully checking every little thing. Convinced the authenticity of the sacred symbol, which confirmed the high status and inviolability, he finally lowered his shoulders. Focusing, looking forward, the lawyer of the law began step by step to make all the parts of the puzzle. His gaze became more attentive and filled with respect. At the same moment, the guards, having understood their mistake, fell to their knees before the young man, bowed low, and began to apologize for their behavior. The protagonist was surprised by such an instant change in their attitude. The guard of the order, returning the medal to its owner and no longer in doubt, calmly explained. The Order of Windows always acts only for personal gain, despite the true status of people. Stunned by events, the guy, barely holding back the excitement, confirmed the words of the guards and carefully took his medal back. In his soul, he sincerely thanked Queen Amin for the medal she gave him, because it was she who saved him from unjust accusation. The defenders of the law, having understood their mistake, hurriedly left the hotel. They apologized and assured that the traveler could now return home. The heavy door of the hotel slammed behind, as if finally cutting off all the hassle of the cozy silence of the room during the day. The protagonist, without holding back his joy, revealed his hands to the side, enjoying the long-awaited moment of return. Behind him, Paradise, with a sincere smile, watched this happy manifestation of emotions. Suddenly, Nita noticed their appearance. Surprised by what was happening, she came out of the corner to find out what is the matter. Nitra thought that the only best way to escape was through the window. However, ICS, having reassured him, assured that everything would be fine now. Taking the first step forward, the main character slowly moved to the bed, feeling the fatigue gradually takes his own. Each movement was not easy, as if on a shoulder had an invisible weight. When the Trinity was standing at the front door, Sia was looking forward to their purpose. But the Nitra, lying on the bed, lifted his head and smiled in response. The same round pillow that X wanted so much fell out of business on the bed. After the adventures of the day, the ICS carefully took the edge of the blanket and carefully pushed it away. At the same moment, the hero, without even removing his clothes, fell on the bed, putting a round pillow under his head. The sweet maid, who stood nearby, tried to call him, but was too late. He immediately plunged into a strong dream, and the characters decided not to bother him, and left quietly to rest. An unexpected voice suddenly came in the Viscount estate. The girl, relaxed by resting in the chair, says that she needs 120 medium gummuar daily to create a special copy for him daily for winter. The young man in the suit stands at the door until the two talk. Viscount feels as if he was being cheated. She fades for a moment, and then she thinks deeply, trying to remember the idea that could change the course of events. The girl extends her hand to the cylinder, as if he dare to realize the plan. Her plan is to combine the wind with the fire, hoping to create something new and unusual, using the power of the elements. The girl only smiles contemptuously at such an opinion, assuring that she would never have done like that if she thought. At the same time, the cylinder is imperceptibly. From the cylinder in which something evaporates, a rectangular opening is visible. She is curious with interest that this device is probably created by the professor of the X using the magic of the elements. As a result of this experiment, it was possible to obtain a mysterious substance. Viscount reigned on the spot, accepting a significant pose, and reported that his device received a high appreciation from the princess. In response, he asked to reduce the rent for this product, and instead promises to put it 30 of such products. The girl, in surprise waving his hands, tries to show him that he stops and waited a little. Window does not pay attention to her words, because she is fully immersed in her own reflections. His mood is significantly improving, because he thought a new idea of reducing the price. He decided that it is enough to order the product in bulk, and then the costs would be reduced. He offers her 120 magic stones for the first rent, but for the second he is asked to pay 1 stone. Without resisting, she immediately assured that she did not say anything about the rent. The butterfly, who stood quietly with everyone in the room, heard the question and explained that this mysterious stone was actually fuel for the created product. The girl picked up the opinion of the Beretsky, completing his sentence and telling how these devices carry. When Vikantov was informed that he would need as many as 3,600 magical stones, he was scared. From the unexpected value of this amount, he had the gift of language, and a void appeared in his eyes. In horror, he shouts that everything is lost. His voice cuts the space filled and bitter. Everyone is trying to get rid of the window, but their words dissolve in the void. Elsewhere, after a strange sleep, the hero wakes up. Initially, it opens only one eye. He feels better and did not even notice how he fell asleep. At the same moment, he gets to his feet and stretches. First, he extends forward with his right hand, involuntarily closing his eyes. Having his head off the mucus pillow, he is convinced that the best pillow is not to be looking. Nitra wakes up and meets his older brother. Behind him is a joyful younger sister of Paradise, who gently puts his hands on his shoulders. In response, X hello to them. The protagonist mentioned that the Paradise met with Urikar, so he wondered if something special happened. She reassured him, they say, nothing wrong, they just talked. She also remembers that he knew him because he looked after her when she lived in the slum. The protagonist thinks about Urikar and his younger sister. He may not want to offend her, because he promised to take care of her. There was silence in the room. No one said a word. The hero finally interrupts silence, with a smile stating that he's hungry and wants to eat a barbecue. Satisfied friends, as well as smiling, go to the kitchen together. Already on the market, among the many trays with food, there is a pleasure in Nitra. Quietly sang something and tastes a barbecue. Sitting together at the table in the middle of the bazaar, the main character assured the kitten that he would not take his food, so the baby can eat quietly and not worry about anything. The hero with a smile sits at the table and jokes that he will still not be able to eat as much as a kitten. But he says that he is ready for one barbecue. The voices of people who stand aside from Atix are suddenly interrupted by the speech of the idol. People ask questions about problems in the forest, complaining that the situation is only getting worse. 3 men near one of the houses have a conversation about goblin, forest guards, and fragments of magic stones. They were outraged that the goblins in the forest were getting bigger, and they wanted the forest protection to work better. And men regretted that there were no fragments of magic stones at all. The main character listens to their words carefully and begins to think. Perhaps the action of his protective magic has already ended. However, he still cannot believe it. At the same moment, the hero grabs his head and tries to expel everything concerning work out of thoughts, which immediately attracts the attention of girls. He is distracted by his sister's voice. She turns to him. Paradise sincerely thanks the protagonist for allowing you to stay, and adds a separate thank you for delicious barbecues. X just wants to know if he can handle all things at home. After he listened to her story, the guy realized that the maid did not have his own home, and wanted to rent a room at the hotel. He asked her to leave this information with him. The RID breaks sharply from the table, which is a surprise to the main character, and declares to him that she refuses. She does not want to rely so much on him. The guy was noticeably confused, and hurried to explain that he was very concerned about them, because if they are left without a roof over his head, then they will not be able to just go somewhere. Therefore, he offered them his room if they would be comfortable. She was a little upset, and only quietly asked if he would cause him any inconvenience. The hero replies that nothing wrong will happen, and tells them that time to go home. Nida and the main character are gradually moving away from each other. Gathering with forces, Paradise decides that it should be useful. When the main character was in his room at the hotel, it became clear that the room was divided into zones. Nitres proposed to divide the bed with the girl. In the corner there was still a bed with a pillow in the form of mucus. The maid quietly went away. She suddenly dives under the blanket directly into the bed to the main character, which is quite amazing him. The protagonist suddenly pulls a blanket out of his bed, as if he had permeated an unexpected idea or realization that it was time to act. The stunned former listening carefully to the girl, trying to understand what he heard. She was already hiding under the blanket and says with a smile that she can warm the bed until she sleeps. After these words, he sincerely thanks him for letting he stay. It is at this moment that Nitra, turning to the cat, jumps into bed to his younger sister Paradise. They lie together on the main character's bed, feeling the warmth of each other. At this time, X is watching them and experiencing a whole storm of feelings. After taking a few steps, the main character confidently walked the wooden floor in his boots. In the empty room, his steps were quietly echoed. Deft shoes seem to emphasize the importance of this moment. His hand slowly reaches the book lying on the shelf, as if something invisible has suggested to take it. Perhaps intuition, or a long-standing desire to find answers in this book. In the air, a quiet tension, and a sense of waiting. The main character sat on the edge of the bed, where the characters just rested. X unfolds the book and begins to read, stopping in the second section, which is dedicated to the concept of magic. The first pages are how magic uses special magical elements, causing amazing, often illogical consequences. Such a feature is those who do not affect, for example, animals or simple magic. For an ordinary person without the ability, this is the limit of possible. The heroes are surprised that they are just indifferent, devoid of emotions. The hero flips the second chapter, the 12th part, which says that magicians should not be so easy to fall into the emptiness trap. The book seems so boring to the boys that they did not feel as they fell asleep in the middle of reading. The hero suddenly looks away, as if he noticed something unexpected, or trying to catch the slightest sound. X slowly closes the book he held in his hands, as if he had just made an important discovery or came to a decisive conclusion. The hero himself barely holds on his feet from fatigue, so he quietly lowers his head and goes away, wanting only one: a little sleep. The boys were staying on the bed, hugging each other firmly. They are covered with a warm blanket, and the pillow blind lies in the far corner of the bed. An administrator appears in the corridor and notices the hero. The administrator stands behind the stable, and opposite him, X. The administrator is wondering if the hero wants to go somewhere. However, ICS replies that he wants to rent another room. Unfortunately, all rooms in the hotel are already busy, but a man with a mustache offered another option: a room in the attic. He stretched the key, and the main character accepted him, squeezing in his hand. He carefully rises with the creaking stairs to the attic. The attic was dirty and dusty, but he liked it. It was cheaper than other rooms, so he quickly got used to taking care of him. In the attic stood a bed, a table, and some soaked bottle. The hero focuses, accumulates all his power inside, and calls the magic. In a moment, the attic seems to be turning. Everything around shines with purity. Dust and darkness disappear without a trace, and in their place light and lightness prevail. X stretches to his robe to unbutton buttons. He lay down on the bed, spreading his hands into sides. Only his legs remained bent at the knees, touching the floor. He dropped directly on his clothes, and the book was left near her palm. The protagonist, opening his eyes, forgot that he said paradise, and slammed something not at all. Now he just hopes that she does not mention it. Before his eyes, the pages of the book flashed. It wrote that the fences had excellent physical strength, but magically gifted aristocrats become more vulnerable to diseases, but the most talented are able to overcome the void. The girl reads a book, and in front of her stands little H. She says that the old man wrote this book, guided by envy and prejudice. The protagonist lies on the bed and smiles. He understands that much has changed in his life. Since the lady took him to himself, he became different, learned a lot of new. But now he cannot just throw Ryan Nito at the same time. His thoughts are broken in half a word. The protagonist lies with his eyes closed. His thoughts wander alone and rest. X, wrapped in a blanket, looks at the window, which the star flies. He tells himself that tomorrow is a new life, so today, you need to sleep before. ICS lay motionless on the bed, looking thoughtfully in the ceiling. At the heart, he understood well. To spend money on the rented housing made no sense. 3 friends, X, Paradise, and Nitra, rushed forward, overflowing with a joint enthusiasm. As always, the kitten escaped far forward. They were met by a young manager who worked at a prestigious real estate agency. She turned to the guests and wondered what could be useful to them. X was delighted to tell about his recent victory and shared his dreams to buy his own home as soon as possible. He did not leave his head that life is a number of amazing adventures, and one of these adventures is to buy his own home. He has long planned to buy a house for the gold coins that a wise master Amin once gave him. The female manager politely wondered, "What is the budget?" He proudly replied that he had as many as 5 gold coins. The girl was barely noticeably smiling, hearing such an unusual answer. This budget proposal was really different from everything she had to deal with when working with clients. She looked carefully at the young man, realizing that finding a home with such a modest budget will not be easy. However, X maintained a calm appearance and assured that he had no special requirements. A little tilting his head sideways and without removing a smile from his face, he thought how his magical abilities could change any home. The administrator, in a strict business suit with enthusiasm, informed visitors that she was ready to introduce them to the best options for homes. Her graceful hand with a perfect manicure pointed to a bizarre building, which was proud to be called Rock House. Young people viewed the facade of the house with genuine curiosity. No idea why the word rock appears in its name. The administrator welcomed a heavy front door and a gesture called visitors to cross the threshold of this unusual home. Crossing the threshold, they froze in surprise, passionate about the incredible beauty of the interior. Their surprise became even greater when one of them involuntarily opened his mouth with surprise, and then quickly covered his palm, trying to hide his surprise. Raising their heads, they finally saw what struck their imagination. The vault of the ceiling really resembled a real natural rock. They were explained that they have a unique design project, inspired by natural forms of rocks. After learning that the bedroom is located on the 3rd floor, one of the guests was doubted in the convenience of such a decision. After a thorough inspection, he finally decided that this unusual house did not meet his idea of the perfect home. He was frightened not so much by the height, but the idea that seemed too extravagant. The next stop of their inspection was the urban shorts, neglected, close quarters, which prevailed a completely different atmosphere, and the houses here were sharply different from the well-groomed homes in other parts of the city. The administrator, widely swinging with her hand, invited them to follow her to an inconspicuous building, which was more released on an abandoned warehouse than a residential house. What came before their eyes was reminiscent of the ruins rather than someone's house. The destroyed walls, scattered brick, and the complete absence of the roof created a depressing picture of the forgotten home. Seeing confusion on the faces of the guests, she explained that the house was created on the principle of open space. It only added even more questions. At that moment, their little satellite, always sensitive to foreign sounds, alerted. His ears were lifted, and then pressed to his head, as if he were preparing for a probable danger. He boldly jumped forward, rushing rapidly in front of his mentor, fully ready to meet a possible threat. His wool was stubborn, and the tale of the stress. His reaction was lightning. He immediately grabbed a volatile stone with a bare hand, showing striking agility and speed. The owner, with excitement for the safety of his friend, hurried to find out whether he was injured when he caught a dangerous projectile. Suddenly, 3 local people appeared from the ruins. Seeing strangers, they accepted them as invaders and raised a noise, waving their sticks and angry with their territory immediately. Visitors were in a hurry to dispel misunderstandings. They immediately began to explain that they only looked at the house and had no bad intentions. One of them, a little excited, tried to speak convincingly. When the hero understood the true cause of the conflict, he had sincere repentance and inconvenience for everything that happened. Talking to the locals, it became clear that in that house could live if it were not for the lack of a roof. Now this place was used by local children for their games and entertainment. Realizing that this option is not suitable for them, they asked to show other available homes, hoping to find something more acceptable. Thinking a little, the administrator barely wrinkled and bit her lower lip, and then confessed that the proposed house was slightly exceeding their budget. But it can show another option. The next inspection stop fell on a cozy corner. When they entered the kitchen, they immediately enveloped an atmosphere of comfort and cleanliness. Inviting them to the house, she told in detail about the location of the rooms. There were 3 separate rooms, a spacious kitchen, a cozy living room, and there was a market where you could buy everything you need for a convenient life. The young man was fascinated. He imagined how he could turn this place. However, he was doubted. Will he be able to buy his own home and live on his own without having a constant job? Seeing his alarm, the administrator went closer and, truly concerned, gently asked what was exciting the boy. 3 candy lay on her outstretched palm, as a sign of support and hope, a quiet testimony of friendship and warmth. Thinking, the young man tried to understand whether his heart was striving for this house, or is it only a fleeting admiration that would soon pass. In an unusual outfit, a small hat and cloaks, he seriously thought about an important step. Is he ready to buy a house, even if you have to work a lot? A light smile touched his mouth. Maybe now it was no longer in the house, but in ordinary candy. Having tasted the treat, he with genuine pleasure noted his unexpectedly pleasant taste. The sweetness instantly warmed his soul, and seemed to be magically dispelled the last doubts that his heart had been torturing his heart. He smiled sincerely, taking a little starry, and this smile made his face even more attractive. He confessed that perhaps right now, during this special period of his life, he really needs this house. Overcoming his natural indecision and internal shyness, he still decided to approach the administrator. Politely, though a little uncertain, he asked him to give him some more time for an extremely important conversation. She was genuinely surprised when he suddenly asked her and did not hide it in response. He became very awkward under her attentive and vigilant look, so he lowered his eyes, feeling embarrassing. His gaze clearly published the most cherished desire for his entire life, and right now, he finally dared to say it aloud, overcoming all his fears and doubts. Gathering all his courage, he breathed deep air, as if he was preparing to make a jump that depends on his whole life. He proudly lifted his head and, combining the determination with a slight uncertainty, solemnly announced, he intends to buy a house. The news of the purchase was sincerely pleased with the administrator. He thanked the future owner for the decision. As they quietly went to sign a fateful agreement, Their little fluffy friend only looked around, and did not understand what was happening. In the spacious lobby of the real estate agency, enthusiasm poured over the edge, the former and the administrator lively. The woman, glowing with joy, sincerely greeted the young man with a good choice of housing. Suddenly, his gaze, like a magnet, attracted to the far corner of the room. Someone was moving there. The young man froze and could not take his eyes. A young girl was sitting in a gorgeous decorated room and old furniture. The girl exquisitely climbed from the place. Her head was decorated with a gorgeous crown, decorated with precious stones. In a calm voice, she said that it was waiting for him here. Without thinking, he waved the strangers with his hand, as if he met an ancient girlfriend. It was at this moment that the administrator faded sharply and exclaimed that the princess herself was in front of them in her own person. Despite the stunning news, the guy continued to smile at the girl as if he had met her old girlfriend. The princess was elegant from her place, and it was at this moment that the young man finally realized, in front of him is not a simple girl, but a real owner. Grabbing his head, he thought for himself for his short-sightedness, knowing how funny it looks before the princess. He was in his head that he behaved like a real fool. She calmly watched his reaction, and her devoted servant reached out to her with all courtesy. It was at this moment that the young man noticed what grace she accepted this help. He was so engulfed by misunderstanding that he did not resist and shouted from excitement, because he could not understand what was happening around. To the surprise of everyone, the princess confessed that she looked into his past. There was a real sadness in her voice when she told what she learned. She worshipped deeply and sincerely apologized, impressing all those present. Her movements were so sophisticated and noble that everyone froze, holding their breath. X could not believe his eyes. The princess herself bowed to him and apologized. The butler, standing nearby, threw an angry and vigilant look at the young man, clearly showing his dissatisfaction with what was happening. The young man, gathering all his courage, dared to deny the princess, insisting that she could not humiliate herself in front of him. She looked at him with a calm, insightful look, and gently assured that there was no reason to excite. The Bogretsky, barely restraining disappointment, turned away from the princess. His gaze made clear that such behavior was not liked. X, stumbling with excitement, thanked her for the warm words, but hurried to assure that everything was fine with him. The princess looked at him sincerely, trying to understand why he was lost. Smiling magically, the young man sincerely thanked her for not keeping his evil on him. The girl still looked at him with a mysterious smile, as if she was ready to discover some mystery. At this point, feeling the inconvenience under the views of others, they acknowledged that he was in a difficult situation. He did not know how to contact a girl. She was really surprised by such a matter, and on her face was a genuine confusion. The princess thought for a moment, as if looking for the right words to answer that seemed obvious only to her. She approached and took the boy by the hand. The touch was easy but confident. Lula said he could turn to her as a real girlfriend. At that moment, the princess, turning to her faithful maid, confidently stated that it was time to announce our decision. He began his speech with a sense of importance, choosing every word with extreme caution. The Bogretsky announced that, as a sign of the deepest gratitude for the service, His Majesty with him want to give the young man a house of his choice. The young man was so impressed with such attention that he barely found words. Hardly shaking voice and worried, he muttered that it was a very generous gift, and added that he did not deserve such a respect. When asked what housing he would choose, the guy modestly replied that any inexpensive option would suit him. The main thing for him is that the house is cozy and can be happy for life. The princess, along with her retinue, gladly reported that they found a wonderful decision. With a sincere smile on her face, she announced that he had already prepared a gorgeous home, and only 1 coin would be needed for that. X could not hold back a sincere smile, looking at them. Everything around seemed to him an incredible fairy tale, which was hard to believe. His legs, as if grown into a patterned floor, when a new page of life was opened before him. The mansion that put before them was a real palace. The princess, exquisitely gesturing towards the gorgeous building, with a sly glitter in her eyes, winked to the young man as if sharing his genuine joy. X-Ray and Nitros stood side by side without taking their eyes off their new home. Now that they looked at this majestic estate, the future, so vague and unknown earlier, suddenly appeared to them clear and clear. From that moment on, this luxurious estate belonged to them. Rising the majestic stone stairs of an ancient mansion, X could not hide his surprise and thought that such a gorgeous home was exactly a lot. When the princess told the story of the house, she did not resist and laughed quietly, imagining all those funny circumstances. Lulaz added that the house was then sold for only 1 coin. The hero wondered, if this is the only drawback, then he does not deserve such a beautiful home. Looking for advice, he thought to the void, to his faithful companion, which always appeared in the most unexpected moments. At the same moment, a small dark gap suddenly emerged from under the raincoat. X was so impressed by what he saw in place, as if fossilized by surprise. His heart accelerated his rhythm when he saw a void like a little spirit, and more begins to appear before his eyes. The void, taking some uncertain steps with his little legs, was on the ground, looking extremely sweet and defenseless. Seeing a strange creature, the guards were immediately alert. They took the group in the ring and stated loudly that they should protect the princess. Paradise and Nitra, who stood behind the backs of the guards, tried to reassure them, assuring that a small void would not harm anyone. X realized that the baby became so real that everyone could see him already, and it was deeply excited. He realized that it was a sign of enhancing their magical communication, and such changes could have serious consequences. He and Emptiness have long detained his views on each other, silently sharing invisible but significant emotions. The hero with anxiety realized that he had already reached the 3rd level of magic. The baby became more and more stronger, and the creature looked at him with great good eyes, as if trying to tell something without words. He understood that if the creature completely captures his body and appears in this world, he can turn either into a king of demons, or into a devil, or become a hermit. The further fate of such people remained a mystery, because they had to leave the settlement. It was not known to anyone that they were waiting in front, and this unknown frightened Afinth was no less than possible changes. The Bogretsky, keeping a serious look and stirring on the full height, politely asked for permission to examine the baby. Crossing his eyes, Shinvoid and his companion exchanged anxiety, but in their eyes a decisive desire to act. The Bogretsky did not disappear with any extra moment. He got a special device for reading desires, which was surprisingly reminiscent of the ancient camera. The hero looked at the butter, when a sheet suddenly jumped out of the car with a written desire. The nobleman, after reading the note carefully, kept a strict facial expression, trying to understand what the demons seek. The princess, watching everything that happened, first with embarrassment, frowned his eyebrows. Her thin eyebrows came together on the bridge, but later she did not resist, and smiled. Her laughter came over the yard, like a ringing, forcing everyone to look at her. Lula began to wipe the tears that made laughter. She considered written in the note incredibly funny. The butt, embarrassed because of the reaction of the princess, humbly bowed his head and politely asked that he was the cause of her fun. X sighed lightly, and only now realized that everything succeeded, so he allowed himself a quiet, invisible smile. He turned his gaze to the little warrior who stood, crossing his hands on his chest, and looked at him with deep sadness in his eyes. Smiling to his friend, the former agreed, clearly confirming their intention. Hearing these words, the void immediately rose, as if feeling the influx of strength, and gladly began to run and jump, celebrating a new victory. Turning to Ryan and Nitra, the maid invited them to inspect the house from the inside, which sincerely pleased his friends. While the friends were climbing the stairs, the X came to the ex-princess and the Bogretsky, offering their help if she suddenly needed. With gratitude, having accepted their proposal, he watched how the girl, along with the butterfly, was going to go. The girl, saying goodbye, gently expressed her hope for a quick new meeting. When they sat in a carriage, the princess once again thanked Aksha for everything he did for them. And he remained on the porch, waving them for a long time, trying to remember every moment of this farewell scene. The carriage slowly moved on the road, removing the princess and the noble from the majestic estate further and further. The princess, conveniently resting on the soft cushions of the carriage, could not look away from the Bogretsky. The butterfly, who was sitting opposite, watched the princess closely. Notwithstanding the protracted silence, the nobleman carefully turned to the princess, asking if she remembers something particularly funny. The princess, without hiding joy, shared with him the cause of her happiness. It turned out that in the mysterious note he read, there was the simplest desire for a demon. He just dreamed of his own home. The girl, barely holding back tears, begged the owner to take her for the real job of the maid. With a slight smile on his face, he assured her that everything was working as best. The heroine immediately paid attention to how spacious the new estate is, and assured the owner that she was always ready to help with cleaning. She stressed once again that the house was really very large. He thoughtfully thought, remembering how he first looked for a house for the 3 of them to live together. He sincerely hoped that it would make her happy and help get rid of anxiety, but it never happened. The girl stood in front of him, folding his palms in prayer, and he looked thoughtfully at her. Perhaps everything would be easier if she stayed and took on household chores. He had nothing against such an idea. As she heard his consent, her face immediately shined with joy. The girl just couldn't resist joy. She jumped on the spot, so passionate and happy. And her teacher, meanwhile, spoke in a calm voice, watching her explosion of emotions with a slight smile. X continued his story and suddenly threw a handful of coins under her feet, assuring that this money would be enough for several years. She froze in the surprise before such a generosity, and in the meantime, he asked her to buy some products. The girl froze in a silent surprise as soon as she saw a golden coin. The owner carefully noted her reaction and then asked what salary she would like to receive. But the girl confidently replied that she didn't need money for work. The owner, with a friendly smile, threatened her finger, like a joke, and said that if she once needed something, she may definitely turn to him. She answered him with a smile, easy and a little mysterious. At this point of view, the owner immediately realized, this girl is unlikely to ever go to him for help, even if she suddenly needs it. The hero announced that he was over with this case, and then looked at the distance, asking himself where Nitra and Void disappeared. Suddenly, it seemed to him that somewhere far heard their voices. He opened the door and finally saw the missing people. They were so fascinated by something unusual that they did not even hear his voice, but continued to look before themselves with unconcealed curiosity. The hero suggested that everyone gathered in the kitchen and looked at his invention with interest, an endless jug of water. Everyone was so fascinated by the study of this unusual thing that they did not even notice how it entered. In the kitchen, everything was raging, like in a hive. Life was raging here. The guy suddenly thought that it was the Void who used magic. As if feeling his guess, the Void turned and looked at him with a joyful smile, as if he were proud of his charming skills. The Void happily rushed to the heroes, shouting loudly that they would praise him as soon as possible and louder. X dropped his knees in front of a little empty, sincerely thanking him for his charm. The baby smiled widely with joy. The maid gently stroked the baby on the head and smiled gently, saying what he was wonderful. In response, the child was flooded with cheerful laughter. While the command was bathed and sincerely rejoiced in compliments, XCS was watching him carefully with some concern. He wondered how important it is not to allow these praise to twist the boy's head. The hero clapped his palm loudly to attract attention, and confidently announced that it was time to finish the move. Then the character strictly ordered the small emptiness to return to him, and categorically forbade to go out. This order was very surprised by the little one. His face was instantly moving. The hero spread his hands wide, and the Void clumsily made his way under his big cloak. He gently asked for an apology, and with a smile promised that they would still have time to play together. X said they need a photon. Hearing this, Paradise confidently replied that they did not worry because she knew exactly where to buy it. She added that she could show them this place right now. Finally, after a long journey, they got the right place. All heroes were crowded with joy. In the middle of the exhibition hall, the client was confused and confessed that he did not know which model to choose. Next to him was a consultant who advised, "You can try each of the models yourself to understand which one is most convenient." He lay on the bed, covered himself with a blanket, and gladly noted that the footpath was surprisingly soft and pleasant to the touch. When X expressed her admiration with futon and said that he was just perfect, Paradise could not restrain his joy. But as soon as she saw a price that far exceeded her budget, the girl's mood was overshadowed. She took a deep breath and sincerely advised the client to first try the convenience of other futons who were at the exhibition before making the final decision. The young man took futon in his hands, looked carefully at the Paradise, and, when he thinks a little, he still agreed to her proposal, saying that he was fine, he would do it. Carefully examining all the futon, they came to a common conclusion. To choose from such a variety was quite fatigue. The hero sincerely thanked Nitri, smiling at the bottom of his heart and saying warm words of gratitude. He gladly suggested helping carrying things and chosen futon, thus showing his desire to be useful. The protagonist said that he managed to look at the whole house, and now he felt very tired. It was at this moment that an empty space escaped from his cloak, and he announced that it was time to start the game. The hero was forced to refuse the Void in a joint game, explaining that now it is necessary to postpone all the entertainment. An offended answer, the emptiness was angry, and stated that he would now play on his own. At this time, the moon was already shining outside the window, and in the house, Silent lightly lit the light. He slowly wandered the house, occasionally creating balls of wind hanging in the air and throwing bizarre shadows on the walls. The hero waved his hand, and a shiny ice ball appeared in the air. Magic was easily conquered by his movements, creating a transparent miracle from the ice. He continued to create his spell, and a happy glow glowed on his face. In his thoughts, words that he was called charming again and again sounded. The emptiness slowly approached the wall on which the paintings were hung. He removed one of them, turned it carefully in his hands, and looked carefully on all sides. The void acted calmly and confidently, without showing neither the slightest excitement. Suddenly, someone cautiously touched the sleeping Rai by the shoulder, and she woke up sharply, meeting her gaze with Nita. Having realized who woke her up, the girl looked around quickly. A mysterious smile appeared on his face, and he mysteriously said that she should see immediately what was happening, because something incredible happened. His voice was full of intrigue, awakening his curiosity and impatient expectations. Paradise has not yet woke up. Her gaze remained sleepy, and the heavy eyelids were barely opened. Niatress slowly took the door handle and carefully turned it. The door was slightly squeezed. The girl froze on the spot. Her eyes were widely revealed with surprise, and her breath caught. She froze on the threshold, covering her mouth with her hand with surprise. Ray silently watched her, thinking why these paintings were simply hanging in the air without any support, and at the same time felt confusion and admiration. Nitra, like an experienced acrobat, easily jumped and found himself in the air, smiling playfully. He cheerily announced that the turn of Ray to join this air journey. The girl shouted, scared, watching her girlfriend fearlessly jumping from one pair picture to another. Bawling on the edge of one of the paintings, Nitra performed complex pirouettes, forcing Paradise to close his eyes and ask him to be careful. At first, she protested loudly, shouting that it was impossible to do so and that it was a real madness. But over time, her cries turned into laughter, and a sincere smile appeared on her face. Little by little, the girl began to forget about her fear, and the curiosity and desire to join this unusual activity with the boy came to his place. It was at this moment that their attention was attracted by the mysterious figure that it suddenly appeared from the air. The void stood aside, watching them with their eyes filled with curiosity and mystery, as if he saw something amazing with his own eyes. Nitra, noticing the appearance of a mysterious figure, immediately assumed that this is the very hand of the emptiness created this magical space with paintings that spread in the air. In the meantime, the baby stayed in place and smiled mysteriously. Paradise, with warmth in her voice, turned to Little, saying that he was a very good and wonderful boy. The hero supported her words, noting that their mysterious friend was truly cool, and the emptiness, hearing it, did not stay and began to smile. The hero, still smiling, pulled a juicy apple out of his pocket. The girl, seeing this gesture, attracted a kitten and praised him for good behavior, filling around her comfort and warmth. Paradise was fun with the house with her friends. Her face shone with happiness. Suddenly she stopped, took a ripe apple and offered to give it to the owner as a sign of gratitude. Paradise took out something brilliant from her pocket, carefully turned the object in her hands, and, without his gaze from him, began to speak. She got a small shiny knife from her pocket and, rotating it in her hands, said that it would be more convenient to cut an apple into slices, so it is easier to eat. Ray leisurely cleaned the apple and said that as soon as she finished, everyone had to dress. Her words were frightened by the kitten. She faded with fear and disappeared from his hand. Deeply immersed in a dream, the gentleman was laying out on a wide bed, occupying almost all of the space. The sudden knock on the door cut the silence of the room, echoing from the walls. It was so unexpected as a thunder in the clear sky. But the gentleman, immersed in a deep sleep, continued to sniff calmly. A small kitten, along with the girl, quietly went out to the door, carrying a breakfast on a tray for a sleeping gentleman. Paradise kept appetizing food carefully in her hands, greeted with him, and gently sinking her down, holding a bread knife. Paradise carefully lifted the lid from the tray, and the owner froze from capture. On the tray lay an apple, neatly sliced with thin slices. X could not hold back smiles when he saw a sophisticated decorated apple. He was sincerely captured by the chef's skills, and he with warmth noted how touching it was, and soap. He smiled widely and, feeling sincere thanks, thanked everyone present for such a pleasant surprise. While the hero gladly tasted every piece of apple, admiring his taste, everyone smiled and told how a little helper carefully helped cook this treat. The X bent his head lightly, and a warm smile appeared on his face. He thanked the Paradise from the bottom of the heart, praising her for his excellent work and expressing his sincere gratitude for her contribution. The girl was so embarrassed that she couldn't take her eyes. She looked at him without clipping, as if fascinated, afraid to miss at least the slightest movement or change of facial expression. The girl shouted happily, her face blossomed with a sincere smile full of emotions. She exclaimed happily that she would continue to work hard, investing all strength and energy in her business. The heroine settled in a cozy corner, holding a cup of tea and a plate with a cookie. She slowly broke up small pieces of toast and slowly brought them to her mouth. She comfortably settled on the edge of the bed, wrapping her legs. She baked the cookies mechanically, almost without feeling taste, because all her thoughts were inseparably circling around X. The girl imagined what he was doing now. Suddenly, the eyes of a soft wing toy, which she machine has stroked, shone with soft light. Little X, thin and pale, sat just on the cold floor. Carefully holding a piece of bread in his hands, he looked not childishly tired, although he recently was only 10 years old. In the background was a man with black hair, whose face expressed deep reflections. It seemed that he tried to understand something very important. But suddenly he told everyone that for the first time in a long time, they had maple crabs, for the first time in a long time. X sharply turned to a familiar voice, and before his eyes the memories of the past flashed. Once upon a time, when the parents got into the hands of the robbers, he was hunted with his uncle, who cared for the boy. The uncle, who was heating by the fire, turned sharply to X, raised his eyebrows, and rudely asked what he was staring. He called him a gallows, but his aunt, who was nearby, gently calmed the man. The hero felt grateful to them. Amazing silence prevailed around, which was rarely broken only by the rustle of leaves and a single bird singing. X sat on an old fallen deck, looking thoughtfully where the sky touched the forest. He did not leave the question, how can he be useful to these people? A deep breath broke out of the breast. Inside, he felt that he had some debt to them. Suddenly his gaze frozen as if he saw something unusual. The eyes expanded instantly, and the eyebrows rising lightly. At that moment, an idea that could completely change his idea of everything that was happening fully flashed in his head. Two figures appeared in front of him, who were talking lively. They talked about some maple crabs. They did not even hear about such creatures of ACS before. Their voices were heard from afar, as if through a thick fog. One of the interlocutors, having fallen asleep, asked if the forest where these crabs lived was already so dangerous. He heard the spooky stories about how people died there. The second man just waved and said it was fiction. The words of strangers made the hero think. He remembered how his uncle said that in this forest everything was growing very badly, as if the forest itself sucks life from all living things. Suddenly, the silence broke someone who called the boy. He shuddered with surprise and turned sharply, feeling the heart crazy with fear and anxiety. Recognizing, he asked the strangers what they wanted from him. They offered to join the hunting of crabs, but they immediately warned, "It is impossible to tell anyone." The proposal seemed very seductive. The opinion of the young man drove to the mysterious claws. He tried to imagine what they look, and suddenly remembered that he was his favorite delicacy of his uncle. His imagination was drawing strange paintings, and he plunged more deeply into reflections on crabs. Uncle always said that he had never tasted anything more delicious than them, and now the boy had a chance to make him a present. Having collected the courage, he accepted the proposal of the stranger. They stepped confidently, and the outlines of the red forest were already clearly ahead. Lifting his head, the guy looked at the unusual picture with delight. The leaves on the trees glowed with bright colors. He sincerely surprised that they had already got to this mysterious red forest. Carefully ripping away one leaf, he lifted him to his eyes and saw that the leaves were shaped as if nature itself had created this amazing coincidence. His comrades were markedly excited. Their faces were whitewashed. It seemed that this forest really had a special power. It filled the hearts with an unknown anxiety. One of the boys could not stand the tension. He began to be nervous, asking how much they would go to the crabs, and complained that the ground under his feet was all smickened and difficult to go on it. The guy, full of confidence more than others, took a step forward, reached out and pointed to the amazing picture in front of them. He gladly reported that it was here that they would find those crabs who were sought for so long. His finger pointed to the small maple crabs who were cleverly fussing on the ground, as if persistent workers were engaged in an important business. Their fast and coordinated movements enlivened this picture. The young man dropped on his knees, opening his eyes. It was clear that the characters were going to catch as many crabs as possible. In the air, there was a premonition of something interesting. Taking one crab in his palm, The Maid carefully ran his hand on his shell, thinking that with so many prey, he may also get something. The guys were enthusiastically talking about how to catch crabs. Their faces glowed with joy and eagerly. They quickly and cleverly ran between the trees, catching crabs that tried to escape. Hunting began successfully, but suddenly one of them pulled his hand back, shouting from surprise and pain, and asked what was happening. His sudden reaction immediately alarmed everyone else, and the company froze in silence, listening carefully to strange sounds around. One of the boys, trembling with fear, looked around and muttered quietly, as if trying to reassure himself. It is probably some two loud flies that he had never seen before. When he lifted his head, in his eyes the true horror and fear were lit. What he saw made his heart crazy. His face was shy. His lips became dry from excitement. Many huge insects swarmed before him. X still held a crab in his hands and did not understand anything. He looked at his comrades, and they shouted in a panic that they were dangerous barbed predators gampots, who were horrible legends. The guys in a panic rushed to flee, and the hero remained to sit still, full of confusion. He could not understand what really happened and why everyone was so scared. The young man, immersed in his own reflections, did not look from the giant cloud of insects that circled over his head, and looked down silently. Suddenly he felt something strange, lifted his eyes and froze. What appeared before him made his heart stop for a moment. Looking at the dark silhouettes that circled in the air, he recalled the stories of prickly tags, dangerous insects whose bites cause unbearable pain. At this point, his attention was attracted by a mysterious figure, which suddenly appeared from nowhere. Long hair fluttered in the wind, forming a strange glow around the head. Suddenly, the silence was torn by a sharp roar, similar to a blow to the thunder. It was such a loud explosion that the earth shook under his feet. The frightened young man instinctively grabbed his head with his hands, trying to protect himself at least. The young man slowly lowered his hands, and his eyes opened wide with surprise when he looked at a stranger. Her long, blonde hair was blowing the wind. It was at this point that the guy realized that this mysterious figure was a rescuer. The mysterious figure, wrapped in long hair clothing in the wind, stood, without moving from a place, back to the young man, and did not speak a word. Its slender silhouette in the darkness looked almost unrealistic, as if a ghost among the night silence. Returning to the young man, the stranger was calm, but he looked into his eyes and sympathetically asked if he had suffered. In her look, she felt genuine care. The young man could not take a passionate gaze from her. Stunned by her beauty, he did not restrain and confessed that he had never seen such a charming person in his life. He was simply fascinated by her presence. He could not look away from her. Her unreal beauty forced her hair on his body to become stubborn, and in his head it was noisy as if something was jerking inside. As a sign of deep gratitude, the young man fell on one knee, and leaning his head, sincerely thanked his savior for appearing at that decisive moment. Without getting off his knees, he slowly raised his head and looked at her again. Noticing his condition, the stranger leaned somewhat. In her voice was a gentle concern. She paid attention that his legs trembled with excitement, and asked not to overstretch. She stopped for a moment, looked thoughtfully at the young man, and suggested that he may have been like a raw diamond, the true value of which had not yet opened the world. She surrounded her chin on a graceful hand and watched his actions closely, as if trying to look straight into her soul and solve all his hidden thoughts and feelings. The young man continued to sit without bringing his eyes from her, confused and did not understand what was happening. Then the stranger said she was feeling a magical gift in it, and perhaps this gift even exceeds her. She thoughtfully suggested that he probably has some poor health, because it is often the case in those whose magical power is actually very great. The young man dropped his eyes embarrassed and blushed slightly, as if confirming her assumption. He really was ill and could never boast of good health. She thoughtfully tilted her head sideways and listened carefully to his story, never interrupting. After a short pause, looking carefully at his face, the stranger carefully stepped forward and hinted. If he does not deny, she has an interesting offer for him. The young man looked intently at her. She leaned to him and asked quietly if he would agree to move to live with her. With a barely noticeable smile, she explained that she wanted to help him reveal his own strength and suggested becoming her student. The young man looked carefully at her, catching every word. His heart was beating faster, and thousands of different thoughts were spinning in his head. The stranger looked at him with a barely noticeable smile, as if she knew in advance that he would agree. Her lips barely trembled with restrained excitement. He was still sitting there, squeezing his fists so firmly that the bones were whitewashed. For some reason, he became a little restless from this phrase. Deciding finally, he took her hand, and staring at the excitement, asked to help him understand the magic world to reach important tops for himself. For the first time, when he turned to her with the word teacher and bowed his head respectfully, deep respect sounded in his voice. In response, she gave him a warm, sincere smile. It read the joy and approval of his choice. The stranger gently took him by the hand and said that in this case she would wait for him at home. Then she carefully wondered if he was well with her family. The young man looked at her with an open surprise. He asked if all this really happens. Involuntarily, the thought flashed in his head. Suddenly, if he leaves his family, his uncle with her aunt will be happier? She confidently took his hand and said that time to go. The young man, full of hope, obediently followed her. Suddenly something made him stop. He stopped sharply, clenched his fists so much that the bones were whitewashed, and took a deep breath. Noticing that he stopped, she turned and surprised. He, gathering all his courage, asked her some time. The tired man slowly climbed the stairs and stopped on the doorstep of the house. He sighed deeply. He announced loudly. He returned. It was an Uncle Axe, exhausted after a hard day and full of heavy thoughts. When he went to the house, he noticed that no one in the room noticed in the room. Silence seemed unnatural, and the absence of habitual sounds caused anxiety. He expected to see one of the households, but the house was abandoned. Having looked at the room, he habitually glanced toward the kitchen. There was usually someone there. His gaze still lingered in that place, and then thoughtfully removed a heavy bag from his shoulder and carefully placed on the floor. When he approached the table, his gaze stopped on a plate with a crab. It seemed strange, because they had already eaten crabs yesterday, and as far as he remembered, there was nothing left. But these crabs looked very fresh, as if they were just prepared. His gaze fell on a small note lying near the plate. Expanding her, he read simple but sincere words of gratitude for everything they did for them. It was a message from AKS. On the mighty branches of trees, various houses were visible everywhere. When they finally got their destination, the stranger proudly showed one of the houses, declaring that it was her home. The young man could not hide his surprise, because he did not expect to see such a large settlement. Hardly touching the door handles, she opened them and invited the young man to go inside. Looking at her guest, she gently noticed that he would be well, refreshed after a long road. She gracefully put a bowl from which the couple climbed. The hot cloud made the mood homemade and cozy. The aromatic dish filled the room with appetizing incense. The young man was stunned by the seductive aroma, from which he dizzy in his head. He greedily inhaled this charming incense and honestly admitted he had not had such a delicious dish yet. His gratitude was pouring an endless stream. He sincerely thanked for the warm reception, and could not pick up words to express everything he felt. She looked at him, and a gentle smile blossomed on her face, making her even more beautiful. When he started eating, he immediately felt unusual in his tongue, with no comparative taste of this dish. She easily laughed and admitted that she was experimenting with a maple crab extract, a rare delicacy. His genuine surprise and admiration made her impressions and made her smile again. Smiling, he tasted the dish. It became clear in his face that he finally solved the secret of this incredible taste, and it was very pleased with the hero. In his eyes, tears of joy appeared, not in pain, but from sincere delight. Such an exquisite dish was for him something incredible, a true fabulous gift of fate. She realized that her hospitality made him a strong impression. The young man listened carefully to her every word, absorbed all the information as a sponge, and tried not to miss a moment. She put her hand on the table and introduced her name. Her name is Alice. She is a high birth elf. These words seemed to break from her mouth, eagerly even for her. The guy was so pleased to hear from the teacher that he could not hold back a happy smile. It was from that moment that the guy became a student of Alice, and since then it has been 5 years. During this time, he learned many things by filling his life with new knowledge and amazing discoveries. The juicy red apple hung on a branch, like a gem. Suddenly, the invisible hand cleverly cut it from the tree, and, describing the arc in the air, it fell gently directly on the extended palm. It was X that he had already lifted the apple to his mouth and was about to bite the piece when Alice stopped it strictly, noting that he was behaving completely unacceptable. Not wanting to continue the unpleasant conversation, he gladly reported that he would briefly be separated, still holding a bite of an apple. Alice watched the ACS rising into the air, and anxiety covered her heart. She understood that his strength was growing dangerously quickly, too, for such a young age and little experience. Watching his flight carefully, she realized that she really shows only a tiny part of her true abilities. External carelessness and youth passion hid incredible strength and great potential. She froze in place, staring at the horizon, where the sky touched the earth. Alice leisurely walked the street, reflecting on the ingredients and thinking about what her new dish would be. After a grueling flight, his tired but still strong legs finally felt the solid ground under them. He found himself on the top of a huge rock that stood over a deserted wasteland. He chose this place not by chance. It was here, away from strangers' views, that you could safely improve your magic. The young man with a decisive glitter in his eyes proclaimed that today he began his journey. He will become a magician who would surpass his mentor. The hero was convinced that in order to fulfill his plan, he needs to establish a special connection with the void, the source of all power. Recalling the instructions of Alice, he unexpectedly realized she taught him not only the art of magic, but also opened the way to deeper truths and life wisdom. Despite all her caveats, in his heart mature unwavering determination, he sought to justify her hope. He thought about his fate. He was ready to become a real man, ready to conclude an agreement even with the void itself in order to achieve his goal. His determination was adamant. Suddenly, a horned conductor appeared in front of him, an ancient mediator between the world of people and the void. The creature looked at the boy closely and wondered what he wants and what his price would be for this agreement. X, without hesitation for a moment, stated that he was ready to give absolutely everything. Then the guy decided to check his determination and asked directly, "Are you ready to sacrifice the most expensive, your own life?" Without hesitation of a second, the young man confidently answered, "Yes." His face radiated determination, and his voice sounded firmly and confidently. Inside, a fear of the unknown was raging, but he skillfully hid his true emotions. His gaze remained confident, and his back was flat. The stretcher with the horns considered the young man carefully, and finally said that he had an appropriate proposal for him. The terms of the agreement were unexpected. The man demanded as a payment of excess talent. Since then, his body will cease to develop physically and remain young forever. Despite all the seriousness of the consequences, X without hesitation agreed to this condition.